Welcome, ladies and gents. I'm Deeg here today chatting with Jebro. How's it going, Jebro?
I'm okay, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Jebro.
Awesome.
I've been a longtime Guild Wars 2 fan and player, and to me, your face is associated with Guild Wars 2 eSports.
Oh God.
Absolutely. No, man, like to me,
That's a good thing.
you are totally one of the faces. I mean, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Let's get into it. So, but maybe what I could do is we can ease into this a little bit. I can go a little easy on you.
Okay.
So I looked up your YouTube channel. I was getting ready for this interview, and I saw that you started off by actually doing some VODs of you raiding in Rift, and then
Yeah.
eventually Guild Wars 2, some World versus World, and then some of the tournaments.
Mhm.
So maybe what we can start with is sort of how you came into Rift and how that progressed into YouTube, and then Guild Wars 2 and casting.
Cool. That is a story. People have probably heard this before. I don't know. But in terms of what the way things started off, I really liked MMORPGs from a young age. I was playing, and this kind of goes into Rift. I started with it was odd, like PlanetSide back in the day.
You played PlanetSide?
Yeah, it was my big MMO. It was my massively online PvP game. That was the first one I played.
I had a huge amount of time in PlanetSide. Okay, what faction did you play?
Yeah, I played on I was the purple guy.
Yes,
the V.
Vanu Sovereignty.
Vanu Sovereignty. Yeah,
my man.
Yeah, I was
okay.
Big. I was mostly like dropping in.
Yeah,
and running into those towers. I like the small objectives and like running up and trying to get the control point and firing in those stairwells and stuff.
Yep. Humping those stairwells and hot dropping in from mosquitoes and stuff. Lashering it up, right. Bro.
Yeah,
good times.
It was good. Yeah,
you surprised me with that one, man.
Beautiful game.
It really was.
And it was amazing. And then World of Warcraft.
Sure.
Dug its heels in when on release. It was just the end of university as well, so it was not a good time.
Yes, I understand this.
Yes, but there was loads of personal stuff that went on around that time as well.
Okay.
And then I got into like Warhammer Online, and then I got into ORVR, like Open RVR, Realm versus Realm.
Okay. So like large scale PvP, similar to World v World. Yeah.
Exactly. And a little tiny bit of Dark Age of Camelot, and but mostly Warhammer Online. And then as that started to get wrecked by EA, back in like 2009, 10 or something like that, I shifted over to Rift and Star Wars: The Old Republic before Guild Wars 2.
Okay.
But Rift was a big game. I mean, we had a community called Unity, and that was our guild. And we went from Warhammer Online. Yeah,
that's where Unity comes from. Okay.
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about Rift. I never played it. I don't know much about it. Was it like WoW? Is it very different from WoW? How would you compare it?
Probably one of the best MMORPGs that have ever come out, in my opinion. Okay. Stunning game. It was very Tryon were very small when they came out of Rift. They weren't trying to reinvent the wheel, but their classes were very unique in terms of having 3 different trees and being able to spec into these different trees, and kind of go the way you want to go, and not really they had kind of meta builds, but no one really. They just kind of everyone's played what they want.
A bit more sandboxy.
A little bit in that respect, and they had like the goodies and the baddies, or you could flip it either way, because one faction was definitely more religious than the other, and the other faction was like technology based.
Okay. So kind of like a Horde Alliance split, that kind of idea.
A bit, yeah. But the PvP was great. Raiding was, some people said, easily competed with WoW raiding, if not better, just because of the actual mechanics in raids as well. They were absolutely phenomenal. And they used the same PQ, like public quest system, as Warhammer Online, and Guild Wars 2 evolved a lot of their content from what Rift was.
Interesting. Okay.
live events in maps. Like rifts were the main thing. So you'd come towards this rift that basically spawned. I don't know if you played New World, right?
Yes.
New World rifts are literally rifts from Rift.
Hey,
they're
you can't beat
literally
'em.
the same thing. That's it, exactly. But the rift wasn't a portal in the middle; it was a big rift that came out. And they used to have raids in the open world. So they have the raid rifts, which were raid difficulty bosses, and they would have different stages of these bosses, and it was like strikes, but in the open, but very difficult.
Are they like comparable to like Guild Wars World bosses, or something very different from that?
No, it was an actual, like, you had to have a composition and everything else to like defeat these things. Like it was like a proper encounter. Like if someone who from the outside world ran into this thing, they just died. They just got absolutely annihilated.
Okay.
But other people could do that. They could walk by, or people could watch. You know, it was pretty. It was a pretty special game, actually. I miss it. And then Tryon went down up the creek with Defiance, which was an FPS game, but it was like it had the TV show on Sci-Fi Network, and it was meant to have, they meant to have this thing where basically I think it was either the game affected the show or the show affected the game or something. It didn't quite work.
Boy, it's like a decade too early for that idea.
Yeah. Oh, it was way ahead of its time, and still probably even if it was today. But they had a couple of. Then they went a bit pay to win on Rift and went down up the creek, and then they sold it to like Game Ago or someone like that, and it still runs in the background somewhere.
Oh yeah,
I think they sold it for $20,000 or something in the end, $20,000 or something.
Yeah, you know, there's a another popular YouTuber named Josh Strifehaze. He does this worst MMO ever series. Most people have heard of this guy, and I think I actually caught his episode he did on Rift, and you know, it's coming. It's looking at a game that was released in 2011 through 2021 eyes. So you gotta imagine a little bit what it would have been like to play back then. But one of the main points he made is how is it Gamago? Gamago? How do you pronounce it?
I think it's Game Ago or Game Megal or something like that.
And I wasn't familiar with these with that publisher before, but it seems like they have this reputation for just kind of ruining worlds with microtransactions.
I think what they do is that they basically find games that were probably on their way out and dying, and there's some popularity there, and they come along and they squeeze and they buy it for cheap. And like I said, you know, they sold Rift or Tryon or whatever the combination was for $25,000, something like that, which is ridiculous. If
that's
you
a
think
scandal.
About it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's horrible. So with the amount of money they made, like Rift literally launched Tryon. I mean, everyone had heard of Tryon like by like, I don't know, maybe even still now. I mean, today, probably not so much now, but you know, back then, like Tryon were like a big fort. They were starting to become pretty damn big, releasing like multiple games under their belts, and they just messed up and they got a bit greedy, fortunately.
So is the reason that Rift declined because of things that were done by Tryon, or
it was the MMO market changing from sub-based to play for free? I got like Guild Wars 2 or pay to win, pay to play and whatnot. And I'm not. They released this free to play version, and then they had a cash shop which was very questionable. Like you could buy raid standard gear. And yeah, that wasn't.
Yeah, I got to be careful with that.
Good.
Okay. But it sounds like it occupied a comfortable niche, but then eventually over time it just kind of went down the tubes and didn't keep up with the times, we could say.
Pretty much. Okay. Pretty much, yeah. And,
yeah, I mean, there's too many MMOs out there, man. Like it's just, I like to ask people who have put in the time on them, like what those experiences were like what the game meant to them, and people who played it, because number one, there's not enough time in the day, and number two, stuff goes away. And honestly, like the experience of someone who plays a game like that when it's kind of in its prime is different than someone who plays it when it's past or something like that. I think about like especially because I was one of the people who's lucky enough to play World of Warcraft like during the beta and right when it came out for those first few years. before
Yeah.
expansions, and that was a magical
Oh,
time
nice.
because we were all clueless,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and we were all overmatched by the world of that game because we didn't have social media tools. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know what to expect. Like no one. I remember in that game playing I played a flex warrior in raids, so I loved that role because it had a lot of variety to it. Warriors
Yeah.
were of course the de facto tanks of World of Warcraft back in the day, and
Mm.
but we also but because not every encounter needed the same amount of tanks, there would be warriors who were carted along from boss to boss to boss, and you would get to DPS to do damage in between bosses where you didn't have to tank, so you were an off tank. And I always thought that was very fun. But no one at that time understood, at least very few understood at that time, that warriors were actually far and away the best damage class in the game because there's this kind of community story about warriors or tanks. Like that's what
Yeah.
they're for. They're not. And but now you take the same game and you expose it to modern gamers with more
Yeah.
sophisticated tools and connectivity, and everyone knows the best ways to play, and it all kind of falls apart because when you push that system to its absolute limits, it kind of anyway. Little rant there about, but more the reason I wanted to call
No,
that
right.
out was mainly to kind of
I understand your
explain
story.
why I'm asking for your experience from Rift, because I know that there's
Yeah.
not talking to you about it is going to tell me something about it that I'm not going to learn from looking up information about it or hearing from someone who I don't know very well.
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, what it was with the switch from Warhammer, which was mainly PvP to Rift, was the mix between PvE and PvP as well. And to be honest, playing with my brother actually a lot. Me and my brother played that game, and we are quite similar. He's only 2 years younger than me, but and even though we had a lot of the same interests, we butted heads growing up, very much so.
As brothers do.
Yeah. And actually, we bonded pretty hard over that game as well.
Hmm.
And I made a lot of friends, and I would honestly say that in World of Warcraft probably saved my life, in all honesty, when
Wow.
I was young.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. When I was young, I went through a lot of depression.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a very tough time, and online gaming and meeting people that way was was basically my savior. I don't know. I think yeah, stuff, anything could have happened, I guess, suppose. But like there was some other
Yeah.
stuff which helped as well. But like I took a path, and the path was, where I am now. And
Can I ask you a little bit about that experience? Would that be okay?
yeah, sure, that's fine.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know how deep and meaningful deep you want to get on these streams, but
Well, I mean, we'll
yeah,
we'll
it's
we'll,
up to
we'll
you.
go as deep as deep as we got our waders on, I guess.
Mm.
But let's think of turning to games, turning away from something that's very difficult to game to something that I think a lot of people who can relate to. I know I certainly can. Like I went through my own bouts of diagnosed depression and spent that time playing video games, things like that. It's
Yeah.
for me, looking back on it, I kind of see a lot of those experiences kind of like a gaming was kind of like a methadone for me. Like it was a safe drug in a way. I mean, it,
Yeah.
it has
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
its own dangers, as we all can elaborate on.
Mm.
But for some people, it can be a very very safe by comparison to the alternative. One person who I interviewed last year is a WoW classic creator named Def Camp, and him and his brother, whose name is Melderon,
Okay.
um, they make content together for WoW Classic. They run a guild together, and
Nice.
he struggled with drug abuse when he was
Mm.
growing up,
Yeah.
and he hit rock bottom in a big way. He was very lucky to have his family and his brother and his mother all there for him. But one of the
Mm.
main things that he turned to help him kind of reintegrate into life without turning to drugs was gaming.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
kind of ended up being like something that was kind of healthy. He could hang on to, interact with other people who are also sober, which is a big part of that lifestyle.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
So, I mean, without trying to run away with the conversation, I just want to like lay a foundation of like this is something that I think is pretty important to talk about, and a lot of people can relate to. But what was your experience like? Was did the depression and the gaming come side by side, or did one start before the other? Like, what's your story?
I won't go into much of my family history, and obviously keeping that kind of stuff a little bit
Of course,
separate.
of course.
Like my family suffered with depression. Everyone basically,
Sure.
mom, dad, sister, brother, and as I was growing up, I don't think I knew what it was up until I was in university, and I was drinking a lot.
Mm.
I was probably doing too many drugs, and I came to a place where I was almost leaving university. I think my grandfather had passed away, and my girlfriend at the time, who was probably the first love of my life, had broken up with me, and that's when it first started to kind of tumble down. The losses in a row, and then and the school kind of ending, and then moving through adolescence into a period. Adolescence is a very tough period of time anyway, let alone with all the loss and everything else that could go with it, and previous depression maybe. So then I'm in uni, dude. And it kind of just gets worse. Yeah, I mean, I was in a band. I was having a great time at uni, but underneath, I was kind of covering this dark side of me that was just kind of festering, and the drink and the drugs was covering up. And I had an amazing time, and I'd learned a lot about myself and everything else. And it was good times, but underneath all of that didn't get touched. So yeah, then it came out, but the gaming was always a big thing, like PlanetSide and World of Warcraft and other bits and pieces. I remember playing Alien versus Predator back in the day, original game, and I remember actually there was a single player game. It's big now, Far Cry, first game. I remember I moved back to uni to finish my dissertation, which I never did, and moving in with people I barely knew and just playing like Far Cry every day, the first one, because I didn't know anyone there, and it wasn't online or anything, but it was a very, very tough time in my life. But then I found a bit more World of Warcraft again, and had counseling and some medication, and didn't do the thing I almost did, and basically suicide. Just to like clarify that, just in case anyone doesn't really know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I understood what you meant, but it's good. It's good to say the word. How did what you had said before was that World of Warcraft might have saved your life. What was that like? What was the saving? How did that work?
I think it was just adventuring in it was, and maybe I found gaming because of like I was missing, like I felt very alone maybe, but as a kid I felt like very independent and stuff, like growing up, like I felt like I was very much on my own, so games were a good way of soothing me, like self-soothing, I suppose. And then they became the same thing, but then meeting people as well. Like I never had problem meeting people and talking to people. It's not really been an issue I've ever had. The anxiety of leading up to it is the problem I have still. But it's mostly in person, and like going outside and going to jobs and stuff like that, I get a massive amount of anxiety still. But I will always do the things, but that's a later conversation. But I think it did. It could have been anything at the time, and I don't remember who I was speaking to, or specifically, but I just remember interacting with people in some kind of way online in adventures, and like I feel like even PlanetSide helped me out even more, maybe in that, because voice comms and mumbles and TeamSpeaks or whatever it was back then. And just talking to random people and just completely escaping my world for a world which was just completely imaginary, but also very real because of people. That tethered me, I guess.
Right. And in a fantasy world where the things that you're valued for like can come to the fore much more in a much more straightforward way,
That's a good way of putting it, yeah.
I mean, I think that's true. Like
No, absolutely. It is a good
One
way
of my
putting it.
favorite things about gaming growing up was always it's so easy to see my efforts pay off. Whereas in
Mm.
kind of the real world, the game of life, the things you do, like everything's a variable outcome and things can take months or years or decades to pay off. And my
Very
God, how
risky.
miserable is that? Like
Yeah.
it's the ultimate reality, but the cool thing about games is the feedback cycle becomes shorter and the social component of it is something I really relate to too. Like um there's something about having things be laid out for you and having an experience that we all agree is kind of made up in a way, but that
Yeah.
emulates the real world in some ways, um, where it just can more easily knock down the barriers that would normally obstruct you from connecting with somebody. Like you're going to talk to somebody who, let's say, oh, here's a good example. Maybe you're buying conjured mage food in a city in a game in World of Warcraft or something like that.
Yeah.
Very common mage service.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
you're a lot more likely to say hello and thank him for whatever, or maybe you see the same person day in day out. You can compare that to like seeing someone in the real world who's like a grocery store, working behind a counter at a grocery store, and that experience can feel fraught with anxiety in a way that asking someone for mage food may not. Um, I don't know, something like that. But
I'm just
anyway,
rating you on Twitch.
oh, appreciate that.
I
Appreciate
just
that.
realized I hadn't hosted you yet on Twitch.
Oh yeah, that's
I
probably a
was
good
just
thing.
like, I should probably do that. It seems like there's maybe a couple of people in there, and that's what I do, right? I do Twitch. Yeah, I completely understand. It is just like those little interactions. Apologies if I seemed a little bit distracted just then.
That's okay.
It's just a funny world, I mean, socially being interactive with people, and I think the last couple of years, well, I think ever since I got to America, I hate to wonder where I would be now without the community I have and without the friends who I have who are even here now.
Right.
How
long ago did you move over?
2016 Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So almost 5 years
to get married.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're getting close. Yeah.
Cool.
Get married.
Nice.
Didn't work out.
Not so nice.
Not so nice. Now I'm on my second year of, just finished my second year of graduate school to be a mental health counselor. And I'm now literally going to be a mental health counselor in America, supporting kids and adolescents and people probably my age from when I was depressed, So
that is some full circle shit right there.
There is some full circle shit, exactly.
Definitely. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So yeah, World of Warcraft, an experience a lot of people use to help deal with depression, anxiety, things like that. Very cool that to hear that your life has transpired in a way that you've gone from feeling that way, feeling depressed, to dealing with it, to now helping others deal with it.
Yeah.
I really want to pivot to that topic because I find that very interesting. And then we can go back to the gaming stuff, if that's okay with you and everyone else.
It's your show, my friend. Do what you want.
I have all the power. So
I'm very glad about that. I do not.
Yeah, so you have your own podcast. You have your own stream. Does it feel good to be in the passenger seat?
Fuck yeah, does it? Oh god. My brain from doing all I do stream wise and school and everything else. It's nice to not be able to relinquish some control, because
word. Well,
it just is.
I'm enjoying it too. We'll all have a great time.
Good stuff. I'm glad.
Yeah, man.
I relish it.
And a couple things that you're saying, like, oh boy, there are so many tangents that are cropping up in my mind. I'm trying to make sure I pick the best one. Let's go back to the mental health.
Don't have to.
Well, I mean,
talk about what you want.
Yeah. The thing is, all the things I want to talk about, I can't talk about at the same time. So the one I'm going to pick, I think, right now is mental health.
Sure.
When did you decide to pursue counseling for mental health?
Funny one, really. I think so. So when I was younger, I did a lot of traveling as well, and this is why what I did after uni. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do anymore. I tried to work in the media world. I was a sound man, so what I did at university was video production, which was camera work, editing, lighting, video, everything, all of that kind of stuff. And I went and worked on some short films. I did a little bit of work at the BBC, some very interesting work in a I would say pornography studio, doing some bits and bobs for them at times. It's not really a story I've mentioned much elsewhere, but it's a very, very, very brief part of my life.
Please do tell.
Any kind of work experience is work experience in the media industry, my friend. You just get paid nothing, and if you're lucky, like transport. But my friends used to drive around porn stars that they used to, when they used to work for this, I can't remember what studio it was, but the studio, and this was pretty disgusting, but I guess this is pretty awful to be honest, was actually above Disney Studios in London. It was literally one floor up.
There's something poetic about that.
It was very, very dodgy. And I have had a life, my friend. I don't know how this shit happens to me. I really don't. And I traveled the world, and I met a girl, and she was in Australia, and I moved to Australia, seeing some kind of ban occurring here. Wow. And I lived there for a year. I went to Africa. I went to New Zealand and stuff. And then I met her in Africa. Yeah, I've been around the world and done a lot of stuff.
Why were you traveling? Yeah. I mean, no, I love it. What got you traveling in the first place?
My depression.
So you were trying to change things for yourself, trying to see the world, to find some meaning, find some purpose, something like that?
I think I wanted to see if I could survive, in all honesty.
See if you could survive.
Yeah.
How did you test that when you were traveling?
Oh dear. I jumped out of airplanes. I swam across crocodile and hippopotamus infested swamps. You don't want to know.
No, I do.
Walked the tracks, and with the
hang on a second. Are you an adrenaline junkie, Jebro?
Sorry.
It sounds like I'm talking to a bit of an adrenaline junkie.
I mean, I was back in the day. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I know. This is the thing, right? Because when anyone comes into a stream, or they look at a stream, or they think about what maybe they have done, I think stereotypically a lot of people feel like maybe they haven't done much in their lives. Like they've maybe never worked, or they've done work and now they're doing this, and they've not really been many places. But I've lived a lot. By the time I was like, I would say 30, I'd lived the life of probably like 10 people, or like probably even more.
In terms of getting out and doing stuff, seeing the world.
Yes, and doing stuff, seeing the world, variety of jobs, different things, and like, there might be a weird flex or something, but like, at the end of the day, I don't feel like it matters what you do in life as long as you enjoy it. Like, I mean, you could be the gentleman like sweeping the pavement down the road, and to many people that might not look like a fantastic life. If they're maybe happy with their life and what's going on and what they're doing, like, who the fuck cares? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me, it only matters to them. And they could be happy. You don't know what's going on with them. They could have a family, they could be living on their own, they could be going out, they could be doing all these different things that we just don't know about. Yeah, we have all these assumptions about people just because of what they do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I mean, my sister, 19, she had a kid. She settled down, and that's, that's her life, and she loves that life, and I totally respect that.
Sounds like you blasted off in the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, I ran away.
Okay.
I ran away, or I ran too. One of those things. I don't know, but
What were you thinking when you did that? You just wanted
when I
to.
went traveling.
Yeah. What was the thought? What was the thing you were chasing in your head? Because I mean, people do that, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, they do it
Like
forever sometimes.
I know that you definitely laid out a good argument there for just validating people's experiences are valuable for what they are, and not for who they are, not for what those experiences were.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Completely.
there is a certain currency in being like worldly and having gotten out and seen, having taken in a large variety of experiences in the world. And there are certain things, certain truths, certain realities that are hard to expose unless you get out there physically to see them and do them. And it sounds like you really pushed yourself to do a lot of those things at a very young age.
Yeah. Yeah. I was probably 20. So at 24, I kind of went back to my home in London and I worked in a pub
Mhm.
for about a year. Really rough, like Tottenham Hotspur, like hooligan pub. Like, American footballers have, like American football teams have their annual the yearly annual where they have pictures of the team and they have stories and stuff like that. And like old magazines and books and stuff, I guess. I don't
Okay.
know what it's called.
I'm not
Like a
familiar with the
yearly
tradition, but I can imagine it.
thing. Oh, okay. I don't know. But like basically in England, so like with football teams, soccer teams, you'd have like a team picture and then you'd have like stories about the players and like the past year and all this kind of stuff. And these guys in my pub, they basically had one for their hooliganism. So they had like
for their tribe.
Yeah, it was weird. It was weird. They were
Okay.
awful. So, like it's proper like I guess really, really heavy like drug usage, alcohol usage. These people are pretty much like
Pretty
being very
hardcore.
stereotypical. Yeah, judgmental scum of the earth, basically.
Mm.
I mean, if you think about Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, walking into a pub in that movie, that's the pub I worked in.
Okay. All right.
No bullshit. And
What was that like?
scary as fuck, actually, because yeah. I mean, well, it was fine because I was a barman. So after a while, like they give me shit every day, and then they come to a point where they just trust you and they like you. Even though back I'm just like these are fucking the worst people. But you end up technically you're almost working for them, so you kind of get used to it.
Right.
But I remember a night sitting behind the bar with a baseball bat holding in my hand, just sitting on the floor after a Polish group of people came in, and these Tottenham Hotspur fans. I think they had a match with them recently, and I can't remember who won or lost, but they just kicked off, and there was broken pool cues, there was glasses, there was loads of shit everywhere. And on the security footage, you just see like my friends like sitting down behind the bar on the phone calling the police, and I'm like almost next to just with a baseball bat. Like if anyone pops over and tries to nick the money, here we go, kind of thing. So yeah, that was a fun experience, but that was quite, that happened a couple of times, I guess. But in London's pretty rough where I lived. Well, not where I lived specifically, but like where I hung out. Getting mugged by the time you're 13 was pretty much and every kid's experience.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess it hardened you up pretty quick. But
yeah, it's some real shit, dude.
Yeah, it was pretty, like my parents. I grew up in like a nice area, but like I think it was beyond our means very much. So my parents didn't really have that much money,
Okay.
and it was just ridiculous thinking about all the things are just popping back into my head. But in terms, I came back from uni, did the pub thing. Sorry, I do this a lot. I've got very much a monkey mind.
It's okay, man. ADHD right here. I'm right there with you.
I mean, I haven't been diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I should be. Something I should have had a long time ago, but I'm in some denial about
Counselor,
that.
counsel thyself.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I ended up just being like, I need to go away and do something. I need to do something else. Like this media work is just sucking my soul dry. Like it's just like these people are awful. They're not the kind of people I want to be. They're so superficial and very egotistical. He says this is him streaming. And
how long had you been doing that? The audio visual stuff at that point?
I'd been doing it. Well, at that point, I'd freelanced for about a year and a half, maybe, just working on short films and stuff. It was all working for free. And then I did a.
Why would you do that? America. Work for free? Sorry, dumb question.
Sorry.
Why would you work for free?
It's a bit like internship here, where you work for free, but in a way, like in the media industry, that's just the way it was to get experience and to get your foot in the door.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's either you're like your dad's uncle or your dad's friend, or your cleaner's friend knows someone who once did this thing. It's fairly ridiculous. It's like that over here as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just didn't like it, and
sure.
I ended up doing this thing called Camp America and working on a kids camp as an audio visual technician. Just setting up projectors and sound systems on a Jewish kids camp.
Okay.
It was one of the most random things I'd ever done, and one of the best things I'd ever done.
What's that? What was so good about it?
The people I met, there were a lot of Israelis who worked on this camp. They were had literally post position in, because you have to go into the army obviously in Israel because of obviously everything going on. Everyone goes into the army and then they come out, or whoever. And there was the Jewish camps, the kids camps, they bring over these people post service, and they basically look after the kids, they essentially counsel them, not mental health counseling, but American camp stuff, kids in a thing, sleeping,
doing outdoor stuff, activities,
yeah.
some education. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. But it was very Jewish. It was very religious, and I wasn't really a religious person at all, let alone Jewish. But I learned a lot. And also, it was just the very family-centric part of what this camp meant to many people. They would go there when they were 4 or 5, and they'd be like adults, and then they'd continue and they'd work there. So they'd been essentially there for 15, 20 years sometimes. Okay. And it was kind of beautiful in that way. But I met so many people, and funnily enough, the guy I worked with got me a job as an audiovisual technician in a college. And then from there, it was just the people I met, it's always been like that way in my life. Whoever I meet or talk to, because these opportunities just open up, doors open, and I take them. Mm-hmm. I take them every time because I risk a lot. I essentially take a lot of risks, which you kind of picked up on earlier.
Such as being on my show.
That one, and also just the going out and jumping out of airplanes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
but that's a different risk.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're pretty let's say risk tolerant. Then has that changed for you over time, or is it still part of your personality? You think?
I mean, I'm still doing it right now.
All right.
Just by being in America, still, I think.
Okay.
And doing what I'm doing. I could have, after my divorce, I could have just gone back to England, and just probably been a counselor after a shorter amount of time, and life probably would have been easier. But that would have been the easy way out for sure. Seattle is definitely a very different place. Probably more my bag, I guess, is the word I would choose to use.
I imagine quite a bit safer, if nothing else.
I really don't know, because I actually got robbed by gunpoint about a year and a half into being here. So really? I'm not sure if that was right by my house.
Shit, man. Okay.
Well, that was my first experience with a gun.
That sounds harrowing.
It was pretty nasty. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
if it sounds like I am lying about any of this or I'm exaggerating, it may sound like it. But this stuff has all happened to me.
You know, like I
And it's
think.
not great.
See,
Sometimes.
here's why this sounds very real to me, Jebro, is because it's all coming out in bits and pieces. Like
Yeah.
the thing that you learn to distrust, right, especially in media and streaming, is when someone has too well crafted of a story, right? But
Yeah.
this is coming out like real stuff does. Um, I would like to, though, if I can, if you'll indulge me, kind of connect some of these things up. So, you had this great experience at this Camp America thing, and then
Yeah.
that opened up an opportunity for you to get a job in audio visual. And it sounds like
Yes.
getting sick of the audio visual then is what made you then decide to go travel and experience things. Is that right?
Technically that's where I actually started that career, because the audiovisual stuff was more of a it was less audio and it was more everything, like jack of all trades. Like I moved from the office it was in South London in a place called Putney, like Croydon, to a North London. I won't say the exact area, but like to a small little firm, which was like I guess jack of all trades almost. Like we used to build sets. I was a producer director there by the end of by the time I'd left there, and we
Kind of
used to
hands-on
tour Europe
production
with
work.
Yeah, and I did a lot of hands-on before I got to that stage. But like I was very much like a projector. I used to project images onto big screens and work out like the throw distance of how far this light had to be thrown across a room, and what the size of the screen needed to be, or the aperture for the set size. And then I would often go and build the set, felt it, construct this thing, and then put it up in, say, Berlin, Germany. Or like I remember driving to Switzerland with a crap load of stuff in a truck with my friend, and overnight you'd be in Switzerland at like 6 a.m. You'd set the show up, you take it down, you go to sleep there. Morning you just drive back with all this stuff from Switzerland to England, and you're driving through the Alps with like a ton of kit, and you're back into this big truck. Fun. And it's just like, that was fun. I remember those trips. It was good. You wouldn't see the place much, but I've been to Germany, I think, including the ESL Pro League stuff. I must have been to Germany at least 30 times.
You've seen a lot of stuff, man. You've been a lot of places.
Yeah. And the world trip was probably what spawned everything, really. It was. I went to America because I went to the Camp America thing a second time and rolled a dice basically with wherever I went. Like we went to an airport and I was like, I know I've got to be in California to go to Fiji on this date, like in 2 months. Let's go places. So I met some people. We went to Jamaica. There was a flipping tornado there. I can't remember which one it was. It wasn't Katrina, but it was one before that, I think. Or was it after? Might have been before that. So I couldn't leave there. I know, exactly. I know. I remember being stoned off my tits, sitting on the balcony of this swimming pool, just looking outside, and there's this flipping wind going off a while, and me and my mate just like 10 minutes later, literally running and jumping into this swimming pool. And just like being like, this is probably the dumbest thing to ever have. And then my friend dragging us out and going back up to the room. But then I went from there to Philadelphia because I'd met a girl.
That's right from the
pool. Ended up in California somehow. And then I went to Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, Western Australia. I went from South Africa, Cape Town, up to Kenya. And then it ended up in Qatar, which is really out there.
Yeah.
And then back to London, and 11 months from start to finish was where I got to. And then I moved. Yeah.
I gotta imagine this is all like in a big haze. Like there sounds like there are probably alcohol, drugs involved. Like this is like a
not
major
so much
like
drugs.
Okay.
Not just mostly alcohol. Yeah.
All right.
So I'd stopped the drugs after I'd moved away from Munich. My people I knew and stuff had gotten into it, and it was just not my scene anymore. I was like, I didn't get into it as heavily as them. I hardly at all compared to them, and I'd started to see, what it'd done to them, and I needed to get out. I was just like, because I could see me going that way. Because of everything that was going on, there was depression. Like, I was like, I could really just get lost in this easily.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It sounds like you were trying to really immerse yourself in just life, whatever adventure, like literally real world adventure.
Yeah. I guess you could say like kind of going across Tyria, but with somewhat of a plan. I guess I had a 1 to 80 plan, and in between I would just go wherever and do whatever I kind of wanted, picking up those public quests and kind of taking part in events and stuff. Like I remember getting that tattoo in Australia on my birthday, completely pissed off my face. And there was a plan to get it. I just didn't plan to get it on my birthday. And I jumped out of an airplane in New Zealand. That was awesome. Just the many different things in Africa as well. And I'd met one of my past girlfriends in Africa, Australian, and I went and moved with her. I went over to Australia to move with her for I think it was about 9-10 months, and I came back to England.
Okay. Why did you come back to England?
It's just too far.
Yeah,
too far. It felt very removed. Australia is, and this is just my own personal opinion, and Australia was beautiful, but I felt like I was living in America in another country. That I felt like Australia was kind of Americanized and I felt like it almost took a lot of the bad stuff that I didn't like about America, because I wasn't I still liked America at the time, but it didn't have its own personality, and that really just did my head in. It was like, it felt like there were very English parts, very Scottish parts in the south, and in the east, and then the Western Australian felt very Australian, very Australian, mate, and like very much like very hot, and all about surf. It was very odd to the experience, but I lived in Melbourne, which was very nice. And I think it was just too far, like knowing that it would take me 24 hours to go and see my family or my parents if something had happened. And then in the end, I think I just lost interest in her, and something kind of happened in England. And then, I just kind of got on with my life and she got on with hers. And it was, we lived that far away enough that forgetting someone was quite easy to do.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't talk to each other. Over email, I guess. And
okay, so
I regret bits and pieces of that.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like it was quite a tour. Was that return to England the end of the adventure, or?
That's when I got into. I think that's when I got into. So I was still more Hammer Online. That was then when kind of Rift and other MMOs started, and then when I started to work in audio-visual for about almost 10 years and didn't really go anywhere between then. The Australian, she came over and we actually did a tour of Northern Africa. Like we went to like Spain and Egypt and Morocco. And I don't know if you remember about 10 or so years ago in Egypt when there was a massive eruption in Cairo. And like basically there was this almost a revolution.
Oh yes.
There was a
civil unrest of some kind.
Yeah, it was in Cairo, and guess who was there? Yes,
sounds like you.
I was, and it was very interesting. I remember traveling from Cairo to
the Egyptian Revolution of 2011.
Yeah, that's it.
The 25 January Revolution.
Yeah.
The date was set by various youth groups to coincide with the annual. This is off Wikipedia. Egyptian police holidays, a statement against increasing police brutality during the last few years of the Mubarak's presidency. Demonstrations, marches, occupation of plazas, nonviolent civil resistance, acts of civil disobedience, and strikes. Millions of protesters from a range of backgrounds demanded the overthrow of the Egyptian president. Violent clashes between security forces and protesters resulted in at least 846 people killed and over 6,000 injuries. Protesters retaliated by burning over 90 police stations across the country. Holy shit.
Yep, I was there. I'm pretty sure that's the one. As far as I remember, it feels like it was. Yeah, it was definitely then because she came over afterwards.
Were you in the thick of it, or were you just heads down during that?
Was it 2011? I feel like that's the one. Or was it? There was definitely one around that time. I'm pretty sure it was.
I can't remember which revolution it is.
I mean, I don't know. There was a revolution when I was there. I feel like over in like that sub part of the world, there's a flipping revolution nearly every day. There has to be, right, with the way things are over there. I mean, all I remember was getting basically in a bus because we couldn't get a coach to the airport. Airports were shut down. And I was trying to get, I think I was trying to get to, is it Dar es Salaam? Something like that. One of these very like touristy places because it would have been safe. And like, it doesn't matter whether or not it was for a good reason there was a revolution or not. If people are running around the streets with machetes in their hands, that's not a good thing. And guns and shit, you know? I mean, that's not something as a tourist, as a white, you know, foreign, whoever, like in a country, like you don't know what's happening. You don't know what's going on. This is not your culture. This is not where you're from. You can't understand what they're going through as much as they can and appreciate and try and, you know, either join. I don't know what to do. So we do always think, all I'm thinking about is I've got my girlfriend. We need to be safe somewhere. Yeah. We took a coach that didn't take us to where we needed to be. And we were with this other couple, this Russian couple. And basically I think it was about 2 or 3 a.m. And there would be these little buses that would take people to their jobs, like far away, different places. And basically it would be a tiny little, I guess it would be almost like not like a mini bus, but like a very tiny bus. I can't even explain it. With like 3 seats in the middle and then 4 seats at the back or something, or 3 at the back and then like 2 and then 1 next to the door, something like that. And then you'd fit those people in, and then you'd have people on the top, on the roof, and people at the back. Kind of a van, but it's a mini bus is what we called it in England, and like a mini van, I guess, in America. And that's what we ended up in for 5 or 6 hours, traveling toward Dar es Salaam, or as long as we were going away from Cairo, to try and get safe. We got to our destination in the end, and it was like, you know, a completely different world.
Wow.
And that's what it's like, you know, in many places, you know, you've been these very poor, very third world countries. There's these very, you know, beautiful escapes where people go, and this place is just not real. It's not a real, it's not a real experience. It's not the country. It's just this very beautiful landscape.
Like a very touristy kind of
place, yeah,
kind
like
of
Jamaica
consumerist experience that does not reflect the culture around.
Yeah. Like here, when people go to Jamaica, they don't go into Jamaica. They stay in the resorts and the places which are fenced off and barred away from the rest of the communities, because if you go outside of those, people are mostly trying to rip you off. How do I know? Because it happened to me. Again. But I actually went horse riding around villages, and I met people, and I, you know, would talk to people about their experience, and, you know, I risk these things.
Why?
Because I hated that experience. I hated fakeness. I hated fake life. And I just hated that. I liked it. I liked to have a rest and to just chill. But then I needed to know the place. I needed to know the people in some kind of way. And I would analyze the risk in my head and think, you know, I could get into some trouble, but can I die? That was almost the where I went to. And it might sound a bit extreme, but at that point in my life, that was where my head was. And I know that. And I've been through counseling. And, you know, one of the things I will always remember my counselor saying to me, I don't mind talking about this because I'm talking about myself, is that she said, you know, you had a death wish. It sounds like you had a death wish. And I was like, well, maybe. I mean, but then she said, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you wanted to die. It's that you were very much tempting this thing to happen.
Yeah.
Because then it was out of your hands. Like, you'd already made up your mind about whether or not you were going to take your life. But now it was out of your hands, kind of thing. And, you know, talking about that and going through it, you know, even just when you talk about this kind of stuff in counseling therapy, it makes you think about it, realize, you know, that isn't maybe what I want to do, actually. And you start to realize these things, and then you start to see some change. and that's why I love counseling so much, and probably why I went into it. But like, Guild Wars 2, Rift, well, after I'd been back after that trip, back from Australia and the Egypt trip, it was like Warhammer, Rift, Star Wars, Guild Wars 2.
And you were still doing the audio visual stuff during that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't get into counseling until I had, good Lord, until later, when I was like, I'm not sure what I want to do. I'd actually hurt my back on a job, and I think I'd gone on a little trip somewhere, and I'd quit. And honestly, sometimes in my life, I feel like there's bits missing. But I'd come back. I went freelance, and I'd worked at this university because I left my job and I actually went traveling. I went on a trip again because I'd gone to Australia and come back. And I went freelance because I couldn't work at this old firm. And then I went back to work for them again. I wasn't sure what to do. So I went freelance again, which is a nightmare because obviously this is kind of what I do now anyway. Working for yourself is not easy. And then I was like just doing whatever. I was doing new things. And then I started to, make random videos of us raiding and just dancing in Rift, which was just crap, it's fun stuff. Like Rift had this awesome feature where you could literally record in the game with something that would just transfer video to YouTube. It would just upload it.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hell yeah, dude.
That's
like it was amazing.
In 2011, it was doing that?
What? Yeah. Fuck yeah, dude.
That's awesome.
Well, maybe not 2011, but like a couple of years later.
Okay.
Like they put
still
all this
that's
stuff.
very ahead of the curve.
Yes. Yeah. You could export GIFs. You could export stuff to Twitter, I'm pretty sure, but definitely YouTube. Like those videos came straight from Rift. I didn't make any, I didn't edit anything or record.
There was no
anything.
production. You just hit a button in the game. That's cool.
Yep. Made a video file, like a MP4. And then, I actually sent it to YouTube. I think it was connected to YouTube, or you could record it to your computer. One of the two, I can't remember. But essentially, it was very easily. Oh no, it did. It sent it straight to YouTube, but you could save it to your computer if you wanted to.
Okay, makes sense.
It was great.
So
and then you did all the stuff on YouTube.
So was there like a sense that you had of like saying of transferring the adventure from being out into the world to in these virtual worlds, or was it just something kind of different?
I mean, in a way, yeah. Essentially, I mean. I guess I'd already had these communities I was in when I traveled around the world. I hadn't met these people that I had connected with, like in Warhammer Online specifically. When we transferred to different games, we transferred to we had a kind of branching over between the PvP people going to Rift, and then a lot of people stayed there because Rift wasn't PvP enough. And then we had like meetups in houses. Like I remember us hiring a house in like North London, and tons of people from like Germany, Sweden, Belgium, and everything coming over. So cool. And we all went out. Oh, it was awesome. We had like a guild house that we hired.
That's the great thing about the European scene, man. People can it's so much easier to come together. I feel like
it is. It feels like it. Yeah. It's definitely possible in America. But it feels so big, but we had people coming from hours away as well.
Yeah.
And you just kind of make it work. In the end, a lot of people cancel, and then you kind of have who you have. And a ton of people came over to Guild Wars 2, and I remember playing beta, and you've probably seen that video on like Guild Wars 2 beta launch and World v World, not knowing anything, and we rolled the waves, in World v World in Europe on Aurora Glade, and a year into that, I lost interest because it was just everyone started to know what to do. We were just running around in blobs all day. I think they'd brought in seasons and stuff, and then they started slowly bringing like server transfers and stuff. And it would just, for me, it personally just wrecked the whole experience of World v World, and having that server rivalry and server pride that we had all built up in Europe. And I felt like ArenaNet at the time just completely disconnected from that idea of what European scene was. And maybe they saw the numbers instead of what we saw, which was actually a very awesome experience. But at the same time, there were many servers that were just dead. People just had no chance, so they had to do something. Personally, for me at that time, thinking about myself back then, it was not fun. And that's when I went to PvP.
So, World v World Tournament Series, server transfers. The life goes out of World v World for you. You go to PvP.
Yeah, so the World Tournament Series is something different. That was later with ESO and all that kind of
stuff. Right.
Sorry. No, that was before ESO. But the World
I'm mixing up
League,
my terms. Yeah.
Yeah, but like the World v World League season stuff, which, that's right.
Yeah, I missed all those early days of Guild Wars 2, which is sad. All that happened during a time where I was going through my own version of an IRL adventure. Courting and living with my then girlfriend, now wife, who at the time was studying music in Switzerland. So I flew overseas and sold all my shit and tried to make a go of teaching English in a foreign country to support myself.
Wow, that's great.
It didn't work.
So I gave it a bash. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I lived there illegally for a little while, and then I got in, and then I cashed in on my choir boy upbringing. My mom's a church musician, to enroll in the school myself to get back on legal footing. So, but during that time, I wasn't doing any gaming, and that was like 2011, and then that period kind of ended for me in 2014. But anyway, yeah, it was a transformative time in my own life. But going back to you, and those early days of Guild Wars, so you found PvP, which was the beginning of something kind of interesting. Tell me about your early exposure to Guild Wars 2 PvP.
The funny thing was that to find some kind of server, or to try and because of World War, I was talking about the server kind of pride stuff. I'd met a lot of people who on our server who were interested in like kind of keeping that alive. And SPVP, obviously, you can just have, no matter what server you're on, you PvP, and it doesn't matter. You're not PvPing with your PvP for yourself or your team.
Right. It's region wide.
Yeah, exactly. So I set up a tournament.
Okay.
You had arenas. We started to have arenas, and I wasn't in the Shoutcaster program, which was what that was back then. At least I don't think I was. I don't think I applied for it. I got asked to join. That was later.
That's an ArenaNet thing.
It was a long time ago.
Okay.
But basically, I set up a tournament. The idea was to have at least 8 to 16 teams. I had 8 teams interested. The prize money was basically every team puts in like 2 gold or 5 gold or something in each, which back then was quite a lot of money.
Okay.
But just not enough to be like, too expensive for people to afford. And you'd fight for the gold, basically. Top team would get a certain amount, the second team would get a certain amount. It came to the day, had 2 teams left.
Okay.
No one wanted to join because everyone pulled out, and I was just like, screw it. And my first ever shoutcast is still on my YouTube. It's the first tournament video that's on there. It's one of the first ones.
I was just watching that the other day.
Damn you. It's very bad.
No.
And probably a lot of people in Guild Wars 2 community still probably think I'm very bad to this day, because that's another story for another time, I guess.
Well, we should all, I think, aspire to progress enough so that we look back at our old stuff with disappointment.
Yeah.
It's a reflection of growth.
I mean, it was, the intention was to just have fun and to just do a thing. The intention was never to be a shoutcaster and inevitably shoutcast in front of thousands of people online and in front of people like in live venues. That was never my expectation.
So how did one thing turn into another there?
Well, this is where Oliver Bricks, who is a very awesome guy in Europe. I think he was 16 maybe at the time, 17. He was working for ESL. And they were doing Guild Wars 2 weekly tournaments in the EU specifically. and Blue. I don't know if you remember Blue. But he casted very early on in Guild Wars 2. It's one of the OG casters.
Probably
with
recognize
Cyref.
him. Mm-hmm.
You'd recognize it. He does loads of stuff now. He's pretty big. He's like does CS:GO and stuff like that.
Cool.
I think he does Rainbow Six Siege now. Actually, he's pretty big. That's what his main job is. And Cyref and stuff. They couldn't do a show, and it was EU, and they were American, so they were doing this, you know, during the day their time. And it was the evening our time,
right? And
they didn't have EU casters, so it was like, okay. And I think they got an EU and NA one up in the end, and they ended up doing that. But like this was my first like entry into eSports. It was only a week or two later, bear in mind, after my first ever commentating gig ever, which was
so how did
people
how did Blue find you?
It wasn't Blue, it was Oliver Bricks.
How did Oliver find you? Okay.
He found me randomly, I think, through just like some tournament VODs or searching or just something on the forums, and then got to one of my VODs or something, and then saw me. Bear in mind, this is Twitch days pre everything. Like this was just post Justin TV. This was just becoming Twitch. This was very new. This was 2013, 14, whenever that video is. That's the time it was. Okay. And yeah, so it got me in for my first cast. I think I casted with Cyref, or I casted solo, and I casted on my channel. It was either the first cast or the second cast. I casted on my own channel, and we used to get hundreds and sometimes thousands of viewers from my pissy little 2 or 3 viewer stream of which I did one day of a tournament which broke down and was a failure, to then casting on my own channel with this many people. And you can kind of see where my partnership came from. It wasn't every day, it wasn't every week, but then they weren't making many people partners, and I was getting significant views, as well as I needed quality settings. So, you know, quality settings are a big thing. I ended up talking to someone at Gamescom ages ago, and talking with one of the French casters, had a chat with this guy who was like, yeah, we can give you partnership if you want. You need it for this, that, the other. You do this kind of stuff. This is what you do regularly. We want you to have the settings and the quality and extra, et cetera. Kind of blagged it a bit, and I got partnership.
Quality settings. I'm not sure I quite understand.
So back then, you couldn't get above 720, or was it 360? I can't remember. 420 something.
In terms of the stream resolution and the bitrate.
Yeah. You couldn't, because they didn't have the bandwidth for it.
Right.
They couldn't funnel that everyone's way. So like you had, the only way to have that was to get partnered, or then after a while they'd actually got this to the point where if you got over a certain amount of viewers, you'd get the quality settings coming up. So on the cog, you basically could look like, you know, you could look at 720 and 1080, even though they're already streaming in 720. The quality of watching at was probably like, you know, whatever. Mobile.
So they were up-resing it? Weird. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't up-res it. They put the resolution out of what was actually being put out by the broadcaster.
Okay. Okay.
So essentially they were down resolution.
Everything.
Down
which is what you get now if you're yeah. Okay. I get it.
Yeah. So now you can get, for example, on your channel, I can go to, I'm on 1080. Like, you know, there's no way we would have had that back in the day.
Right.
There's no way. You would have had to have had hundreds of viewers.
Right. Right. So, but you were getting a lot of viewers.
Yeah.
And you got that quality, it sounds like.
I did. I got partnership. Because it just kept happening all the time, week after week.
Yeah.
So like I did that for
bringing home the bacon. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get paid for it.
Okay.
Oh, that's funny. It was just a hobby, you know. It was just something we did. And then after a while, that's when the World Tournament Series happened, and they started to take it a lot more serious at ArenaNet. But before that, it was I got invited to the, what did I call it earlier? The Shoutcaster ArenaNet Shoutcaster program, which is what it was called back then. You had to apply to it. It's a bit like the partner program now.
Mm-hmm.
If it pretty much got sucked into that, it was separate until that came together. And there was me, Blue, Cyrus. There was the German Shoutcasters, Chronic Gamer, some of the Guild News people who I'm not sure if you know about, but the German community peeps who do that podcast and all that stuff. Yeah, been around forever.
And that program did what? The caster program.
Well, like we coordinated with ArenaNet on tournaments, and we ended up.
You cast stuff on their official channel, or
I ended up doing that. Yeah, yeah. For like.
That's where I was kind of pointing to.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. So we did the World Tournament Series. The first one ever was in China when the game released out in there.
Right.
It was China, America,
Beijing,
and Europe.
In December of 2014. I have this written down.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't go to that. I didn't cast that.
Why not?
Now, this is a funny story about fate in my life. Again. Okay. Now, Blue did this because he was one of the OG guys that was always around, and I feel like they wanted him to cast the first major gig. And I came in later. That was fine. I didn't really care. But like, I was like, that's cool. He deserves to do that job. I would have been obviously a little bit jealous going to China to cast at eSports. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. At a time where like StarCraft was massive and all these games like being casted over there. Problem was the infrastructure of the studio wasn't great. So what happened was they were doing this cast and it didn't come into America, England, Europe, or anywhere. And basically they lost connection. But the footage from the Chinese stream was fine. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. So what happened was, I was like, this event set off a chain of events that again started something brand new in my life.
Okay.
In my head, I'm like, people want to see this, right?
Yeah.
I can watch this on this feed that I know of and not many other people know of. I'm restreaming this and I'm commentating it right now. 5,000 to 6,000 people were on my stream that
day. Bro, that is cool.
Yeah.
It goes to show you, ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Exactly. Well, that's it. I mean, back then, I would have got copyright striked out of the wazoo, right? But instead, what it netted me was I got Corona Gamer, who we'd be casting EU consistently. That's right. He came over from the German show and actually wanted to get his English better and improve it. So like he actually wanted to cast the English version and be on the show, which got more viewers, obviously. But German seems pretty big anyway, so we're always competing in a way.
Yeah.
And we did it. We watched their point of view that the quality was awful. But ArenaNet loved us for it. They absolutely adored me and Nick for that job. And marketing basically, they said you saved Guild Wars. Like, I remember a marketing person saying you saved Guild Wars 2 that day. Literally the PvP section of the game, they told us, they were like, we needed that show. We needed it. We needed to see it. And you saved it. And I will never forget that.
That's pretty
and they may have spoken out of turn, but like that's what they said. Yeah, no, I appreciate it as well. And because of that, I was asked to go on a panel in PAX South on the Heart of Thorns release preview with Aurora Peachy, Bogotta, and Chronic Game was the other guy there with me, sitting next to me, with Jennifer Hale and walking around the audience, and Colin Johansson and Mike and Mo just standing on the stage doing this big presentation. And I'm like,
what was that like, man?
How did I get here, dude?
Just kicked the door open and the dominoes are falling. What was that experience like?
I mean, at that point, I think I'd actually commentated. So, and I'm not sure if I'd done Pro League or if I'd done no, Pro League wasn't then. Pro League, I think I'm not sure if I'd done WTS. No, that was 2015.
I have Boston in March 2015 and Cologne in August 2015.
Yeah, so first it was the January preview slash on the panel with Aurora Peach and Thingamajig,
Right.
and Boggle, sorry.
That was
which
the big
amazing.
announcement. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like we knew nothing. We knew absolutely F all. They wouldn't tell us a thing.
I went back and watched.
I
went back and watched an old Guild Gab or Peachy's podcast.
Oh yeah,
that they did in like the 3 or 4 days before the announcement, when they were kind of talking about the community chatter, because they knew that ArenaNet had bought a stage at PAX, which you know meant something big was coming up, and they were like, "Does Guild Wars 2 need expansions?" It was a great little discussion all about what the future of the game could be, and a real reflection of
we didn't know it was going to be an expansion.
Anything goes at that time.
Yeah, it was. We didn't know. No one knew.
That's wild. That's wild.
I remember us going in for rehearsal, thinking, "What are we rehearsing? Like, what are we going to talk about?" They were just like, "We'll just talk about, your expert, like what you think it might be." And then we're like, "Well, what do we do?"
They didn't tell you?
No, nothing. They told us absolutely fuck all, dude. Like, I'm not breaking NDA here or anything. They were like, literally just like, like we don't want you to know because we want to see your part
your
of what I did
reaction.
was reactionary. Yeah, exactly. And I remember coming out of the rehearsal, and Jennifer Hale had just done her bit, and Mo and Colin had done their bits. And you know what Colin's like? He's a very charming man.
Yeah.
And the pizza was flowing. I remember walking out, and it was just like this cold, like there was this like rough pizza, and we were all so hungry because we'd just flown in that day, and me and Nick had come in from England and Germany, so we were jet lagged to fuck, and we were just like, we're the first ever PAX South. We're literally like doing this launch thing, and like it was just random, and the whole event was amazing. I remember one of my best memories about the whole thing, as well as meeting all the people and Jennifer Hale and Colin and all the team at ArenaNet. That's where I met my wife for a start, my ex-wife.
Oh my god!
And that's also where I met Angry Joe.
Huh? Oh, okay.
The actual thing, which was a big hype moment for me because I've been watching this guy forever.
What was he like out of character, or was he still in character?
I mean, he was in character. He was walking around PAX South. He was just outside the door because he'd gone into Guild Wars 2. I mean, if you look up Guild Wars 2 videos, his video for, liking Guild Wars 2 is still up there in the millions.
That was the first video I ever saw about the game.
Exactly.
In terms of like generating hype, it's he's very excited in that video.
Oh, he's very genuine, I feel like, in his, I don't know what he's like now. I don't really watch his stuff anymore, but he felt very genuine when I was younger. And I feel like he is probably younger than me still, even now. But like he felt very genuine, and I latch onto that genuineness and an authentic individual quite much, but a lot more words, lyrics. And he was. I've still got a picture of me and him just looking at the camera and like angry, which is not something I do.
Nice.
And I saw my Instagram and other things, and. That's when I met my wife. She was in PR. And I remember I was sitting in a restaurant in Texas, and she pretty much she was sitting next to me, and we just started talking, and that's from there we kind of had this secret relationship that ArenaNet didn't know about.
Spicy. Forbidden love.
I won't say too much about that. But again, I risked it, and in the end, I ended up here, and that's what I talk about in terms of the event spinning over into other things. But I was able to see her because she went to these same events that I went to, so I was casting there. I did the panel for Heart Thorns. I did the W2S cast that you were talking about in Boston. She was there.
Right.
And the events from there as well.
Okay. Cool. And okay, so where should we take this next?
I don't know, mate.
you guys eventually got married.
Yeah.
Was that much further down the line?
That was further down the line. Yeah, okay. That was 3 or 4 years later. Okay. 2 years later. 3 years.
So in the meantime, lots of Guild Wars 2 PvP still going on. Lots more events. Yeah. Did you go to the Boston World Tournament Series event?
I casted that with Kalaris, yes.
Okay. And take us through it. What was that like?
Very awesome. So that was before Hearthorns was getting released, of course. So they did that in conjunction with the ESL, because ESL ran it. Did ESL run it? No, I don't think they ran it. I think that was before ESL were on board with that.
I think ESL was the following year.
Yeah, they worked with ESL at different times. They're a production company, basically.
Okay.
And they did the World Tournament Series, and there was orange logo.
Mm-hmm.
2 American teams. The Abjured was there, and
Dankening
teams. Dankening was the other American team. What was the other EU team? 55? No, it was.
I have Heaven and Earth, a Chinese team, written down.
That was the Chinese team. Oh, and it was 2 American teams then, yeah, because it was in America. That's right. The region where it was the region that had 2 teams. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Damn, I forgot about that. So the EU team went over to America, and won, basically. It was a very hype event. My casting was a bit. I was still trying to really understand where I was trying to do with it. Because very much so, like the way that when you commentate, so I was very much brought into the scene as someone who came in last minute and wasn't really something that I wanted to do. Essentially, I was just a fun event, and I brought excitement and genuineness and authentic joy out of what I did and what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't necessarily very mechanically minded.
More of a color guy.
Yeah. So I was the hype man, basically. And unfortunately, hype men don't always get the respect of the higher level players. And that was something that I got a lot of shit for until the day it ended, basically. It was very traumatic at times.
Huh. I have no idea about that.
Yeah, not many people do. Some people do. But like I used to get people watching my streams and watching casts, like big casters, I won't name names specifically, but they would basically take the piss out of my shoutcasting. And essentially bullying pretty much and just like being awful. And basically I would get people coming to my stream just telling me I sucked. It was pretty bad. And you'd be like, these are like mid-20s to late 20-year-old men doing this kind of stuff.
I'm supposing that these are people who are members of the streaming communities of the other high-level players for doing this?
High-level players, yeah, who are actually in the community as well, who are in the scene. Teams, yeah. It was...
Yeah, I think that for like a modern day connection, I was just, I've... One of the guys who I've been watching on Twitch a lot lately is Limit Max.
Oh yeah,
the guy who is the raid leader for one of World of Warcraft's top raid teams. I think they won last raid tier and they came in second place this raid tier. And one of the things that I saw him talk about was how the communities of these teams end up doing things that really just drag everyone down with toxicity. Where if you're a fan of Echo, which is the team that beat them this tier, you come into one of the limit streams and you just talk shit about how bad they are, or just clown on them. And there's this line between like kind of playful banter versus actually like kind of being a dick. And it's a hard line to navigate. It especially if most of your social interaction comes online. So it sucks when it happens. And the shitty thing is the people who suffer the most from it are the people who are putting in all the effort and might not, to your point, even be getting paid for that effort.
Yeah, yeah. And later, I think this is fine because it's years later now. Like I did, I was working. I was spending my life like to dedicate to a role, and I would get paid for casting a gig, which was only fair. Probably should have got paid more, in all honesty. But at the time, didn't give a fuck. I was shoutcasting, commentating video games, and I was getting my flights were paid for. And I'd put the work in, and I deserved it, Yeah.
It's a pretty cool job.
It was. You got a lot of abuse. From players, from fans.
I wonder if there are people who who are frustrated because they feel like they could have done a better job because they knew the game better or they knew the players and the
Oh,
mechanics
absolutely.
better. And they're like, I who is this Jebro guy? He doesn't know what he's talking about. I could do this job. This is silly. And there's
Yeah.
this kind of jealousy that kind of comes in. But what they
Mhm.
the crappy thing about that is that there's so much of what you bring to the equation there that is unique. And
Yeah.
as you said, like, you were just in the right place at the right time. And the reason you were is because you got involved and you stepped up and you took responsibility for having what you wanted. You organized your own PvP tournament
Yeah.
on your own Steam. You casted it. You put it on your own channel. Like, it's something I was talking to Aurora Peachy about last week. Like, because I was she was talking about her awesome, like, very patient raid group that she played through most of Guild Wars 2's raids with.
I was there as well for a bit
Yep.
of it.
Yeah, and so what I'm about to say, which is that it's not your typical raid group. There's not pressure to play meta builds.
Mhm.
It could take a long time to get through bosses. It's about the experience.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, man, that is the kind of raid group that I would like to be in. Not about the results, but more about the experience.
Come
And
join us on a Wednesday, mate.
maybe
On a
I will.
Saturday.
Maybe I
What
will.
we
But
do?
how do
Sign
you?
us for it.
And the thing that was so cool about that group, like, to me, is the fact that y'all stayed connected over years. And
Well,
when you
I came in a bit later than probably,
and
Aurora Peachy was
Peaky
there for a
said that
while.
too, that people cycle in and out, which is normal with
Yeah.
any kind of
Yeah.
player group of players, or even people in the real world. Jobs,
Yeah.
families, people come and go. But that there's a core that sustains. And I think that it's interesting, and this is a tangent. I don't want to go too far down, but I feel like I should say it now. That, like, so much of what makes those experiences in video games good is
Yeah.
that connectivity.
Mm.
The trick is the way that the incentives are arranged kind of produces these outcomes where people tend to treat each other as like NPCs almost.
Yeah.
And it takes a real act of personal awareness to
Mhm.
overlook the expediency of chasing the outcomes of, I need this raid clear this week. I need my legendary
Mhm.
insights to make my raid armor, and say, is that what I really need? Or is what I really need to have a group of friends who I get to spend some time with every week? And it's a real
Yeah. It's difficult, actually.
It is difficult to do.
Yeah.
But that ability is something I'm learning how to wield, I would say, more frequently than I used to. And
Yeah.
this podcast is a great example of that.
Uh-huh.
So, because the podcast has its moments. Sitting down and talking with you, this is the best part of it. But all the
Yeah.
research, all the sending invites out, all the post production, all the social media stuff, like, that ain't that. You get it. You get it more than I do.
No, I get it as much as you do.
Yeah.
I think you've been doing this for probably about the same time.
Yeah. How old is Lightbringers?
I used to do, well, actually, to be honest, I mean, I did PV. I actually looked on my YouTube the other day and I realized I actually did podcasts in PvP early days. I've completely forgotten about it. Like, I haven't done it significantly since then. I did it back then, and I actually did podcasts with pro PvP players because it was a show that I put forward to Grouch, who's Josh Javis now.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the same person.
On
the ArenaNet channel. Yeah, little Grouch. And I actually did that on ArenaNet's channel. I can't believe I ever actually did that. And I did then, when I went to ESO for a while, I actually did a very, very popular ESO podcast for quite a while. It was called The New Companions. And it was, I think I got 25 episodes of that.
I recognize that name.
Yeah, it was very popular. It was very popular. I got into the ESO stream team, which is essentially the ArenaNet partner team.
I want to ask you about ESO, but not yet.
Okay.
Because ESO is a game I'm very
of course.
curious about. I don't know much about, but I'm curious about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Reader Geek is in the chat saying March 2nd, 2020 was the first Lightbringers. Which actually that's I think I did my first podcast in January, so
There you go.
it lines up about similar. But you were doing this other stuff before that, even.
So I've been doing it for a bit longer.
Yeah, man. Like
But, like,
you've been in this game, like sticking your toe into doorways. It feels like, and like
Always.
those doorways just open. You're like, hell yeah, bro! I'm here. I'm Jebro.
Yeah.
That seems to
Like,
be the theme.
I think in and that's the same with Elder Scrolls Online, you know.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine.
It was, but like Guild Wars 2 specifically, like the Pro League, you know, that really kicked off in a big way, and we did like that was after WTS in Cologne, which was the following year, I believe, or
in August 2015. So when that was.
Yeah. So that was a big year for Guild Wars 2, one of the biggest.
Well, yeah, that was the Heart of Thorns release. It was
just after, yeah.
That was a big.
Oh no, was WTS before? No, WTS was just in Cologne. Was just before release.
Right. So the announcement was in January 2015.
Yeah.
Which was about a month after the Beijing event.
Yeah.
And then in the Boston where you had the two North American teams, that was in March. And then Cologne was in August, which would have been about 2 months before the Heart of Thorns launch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so close together.
Yeah, man. And then Heart of Thorns comes out, and then even before season 3 of the Living World content starts back up, you have the ESL Pro League, which I think started in February of 2016. But it sounds like you were doing other stuff before that came around.
Not a massive amount. I was still working in 2016. I think I was during 2014, 15, 16 was actually when I started the counseling stuff alongside all of this.
Okay.
So I had actually stopped working as I hadn't stopped working as an AV technician. I actually worked in an AV tech department in the university in the north of London. And I was working with one of my mates part-time, and then I started locally working for getting a diploma in psychodynamic counseling, which is all about the unconscious, and actually where it was like a volunteer agency where it was low cost mental health care.
Okay.
And basically people would pay anything from like £2 to like £45 a session, which is pretty cheap.
Yeah, totally.
But more like community based, so like for people with low income, etc. But they would offer courses to people in the which would essentially pay for the whole service in a way, which is very awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was very awesome, which is why I wanted to go there and not in university or something, because it felt like I was putting the money back into the community with my learning. If that makes sense.
It felt more real.
I could have gone to university, but I would have been paying like the business of the university and the government for another student loan, and I'd already been to university.
That sounds like a very Jebro choice to make.
It was a very Jebro choice.
Yeah.
It was interesting because I literally did a foundation course for a year to find out what it was all about, and that's the decision. Then you do a year, and then I was into counseling. I was counseling people for about a year before and that led up to pretty much me going to America. Well, actually, I stopped for about 6 or 7 months because I wanted to give myself some time to get used to the fact that I was going to America in the first place without like worrying about clients and their concerns about me leaving.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot to do around that time. But, you know, while this was going on, there was Pro League. There was also, good Lord, the championships for the Pro League as well, because we had 2 seasons. There was the one we did in London, and then there was the one we did in America. And then there was the World Championship, which was the third big thing, because ArenaNet had put this whole roadmap out of all of these events. Yeah, that they needed to get done.
Yeah.
I had to get it done.
Yeah, okay. So during all that, you were also starting this counseling thing and figuring out how to move over to the US.
Yeah, and having this long distance relationship.
Right. And it sounds like the move to the US was motivated by bridging that gap.
Yeah, I mean to get married and to be with her and to come here and see what would happen with like my casting and stuff. It was very much on the side, and unfortunately that kind of went out, which I guess we'll talk about later anyway. But like, it was the process to move to America is a very invasive, horrible experience. In all honesty, and it sounds very interesting because we always think about like immigration being a very, very difficult thing if you're not white, not all these things. Whereas actually, if you're not from America, it's difficult as fuck. It's it's probably easier for me because I am white, because I am English and I speak English as a language, as my first language. It's probably a shitload easier, and I recognize my privilege as being a white man very much so. But at the same time, it was horrible.
What was so bad about it?
The one experience that I remember the most, well, the thing is they take your life apart. You have to have like very police investigations about you. You have to have like, I remember going to the embassy in London, pretty much getting naked and being prodded, poked, and looked at all the holes in the places to make sure that I was okay health wise.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. And it was because of my past with drugs, basically. So that was part of it, but it wasn't like, this was stuff that I freely admitted, which I never wish I had, but it wasn't like, it had been so long ago. I was like, well, I used to do this, that, the other. And it's like, so maybe it wouldn't have been that as bad.
It's one of those things where like, because you said it, they have to do all these elevated checks now.
My honesty really sucked.
It's hard to know where you can be honest and where you can't, but yeah.
I just like to go one way, and if I get fucked over, then hey ho.
If you're gonna get fucked over, it's better to get fucked over for being honest than to get fucked over for lying.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm genuinely kind of a shit liar.
Okay.
Just kind of suck at lying. I can sometimes stretch the truth maybe a little bit, and I do suck at lying, and people can normally see through it pretty easily. I tried to lie, but it doesn't work.
So when I call you up and like, hey Jebro, let's go get a drink, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't. I need to wash my hair. Like, that's the kind of transaction that would occur.
Yeah, completely. I mean, that's obviously one. Yeah. I mean, that's probably more anxiety that's doing the lying than anything else. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But now I would probably be more honest about that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, it was always very. God, I've completely lost track of my thought process just then.
That's okay. Actually, Jebro, I think this is a good moment for us to take a short break.
Sure, I can go to the bathroom.
Sweet, yeah, let's grab a short break, everyone. We'll be back here in 5.
Okay.
And we're back talking to Jebro, Guild Wars 2 caster, eSports man, kicker open of doors, I'm going to say, and ex-adrenaline junkie. So, Jebro, we were just talking through how your life changed in like the 2015, 2016 era when, so Guild Wars 2 was going through its own changes where the PvP scene was becoming much less of a thing. You were moving to the States to go live with the person who was then your girlfriend. You were getting married.
Oh yeah, this was just, I guess that was just as I was moving. It was weird though, because like the PvP scene was odd. Like there was a couple of people at ArenaNet who really believed in me, and in all honesty, and I don't know if I would have been able to do what I'd done without them, to be honest. Especially the job that I'd got at doing the Heart of Thorn stuff, because I think the main person who messaged me about that was Josh Davis, was Grouch, who most people might most know him by. And I don't know if he felt obliged or he saw something in me or he believed in what I did, or he liked my excitement or whatever. I still don't really know. I mean, they always told me I deserved these shots. The thing is I feel like people thought I was very humble in the fact that I would tell other people that they should go and do these things and shoutcast and commentate. And I would actually say, I actually didn't feel like I deserved to do these things ever. it's a very, Daniel, like that's my name. It's a very, it's a very me thing. I don't feel like I deserve.
Didn't feel like
this
you'd earned
victim.
it.
Yeah, basically, I've never felt really like that. And so I'd always be like, they deserve this more than I do, and they should do this thing. Why don't you get them to do it? They live in America, blah blah blah. But they would often say to me, that we want you, and they believed in me as well. So there was very much this. There's very much this, and this is why I've always had a very, and I might be biased towards ArenaNet in a way more than most people because of the way they treated me and brought me into the fold of ArenaNet and believed in me. Because, and this is going to sound ridiculous maybe to a lot of people, but almost ArenaNet was almost the parent that I almost feel like I never had.
Wow.
It was very, very odd. Even though I love my mum and dad to bits and they're beautiful, wonderful people. There was a lot going on for them when I was younger, and when, and growing up, there was not, they were very good people and they did the best they could for me and everything else. And I love them to bits. And they're very good parents. And I had my own troubles and stuff, but it took a lot for me to believe in myself. And a lot of it came because of ArenaNet's confidence in me.
That's amazing.
And trust. Yeah, absolutely. They changed. I essentially, it changed my life really in a lot of ways. I came to America. I met my wife. I know we're not married anymore, but I still, appreciate that experience. And I massively blame Josh Davis for meeting my wife in the first place and moving to America and being where I am now, which is terrible. And I've told him that many times.
But Josh Davis, Grouch, then the community brand manager at ArenaNet, really believed in you, really heard you when you said, I don't deserve this, and said, no, man, you do deserve this. And it sounds like that was something that meant a lot to you to hear.
Yeah, I don't know if I said it in so many words. I think I felt like I was saying that and they kind of said that back to me. But I felt like it was that kind of thing where because I would always say, this person deserves it, or maybe I shouldn't because, these guys think I suck. Or, and I can't even imagine what kind of thing, I know now that behind the scenes, there was a lot of pressure from players in that top part of the scene and people who even still stream the game now who really wanted me out as a caster. Okay. And they went straight to ArenaNet with that stuff. And I know that, people either fought for me or they were just like, he's our guy kind of thing, so they had my back. Whereas actually, and a lot of the community did, but when you do this kind of stuff, when you're a creator, you won't pick, and we all know this, you might know this as well, I don't want to assume, but we pick out that one person who picks out our vulnerability. The person who says you suck at doing this. The tens of thousands, if you're a big creator, they still do it, of amazing comments about, this is great video, you really inspire me, you got me through depression, you did all this kind of stuff. You're shit at this job, you're crap at this, you're awful. You go straight to that because it picks out your vulnerability about yourself and they see you.
Sure.
And that sucks. And when it's players who you are literally talking to and casting every day, that gets to you. And when you get the abuse and stuff I used to get stuff in my comments. I used to get DMs. I had a guy basically tell me how he was going to kill me at Gamescom in Cologne in a very detailed message. Which I never told ArenaNet about, but he told me how he's going to stab me and all this other kind of stuff. Even told me the doors that might be happening at, and it was pretty scary. I got a lot of abuse back then, unfortunately. Not many people know about it, but it was pretty. But this is the thing, as I was growing up, I got mugged when I was 12, I'm even younger than that, I got smashed in the face by some older guy with a beer can and stuff when I was a little bit older than that and got mugged, and all this kind of violence and this kind of stuff, and not home life at all, just so I'm clear about that. But like school, going into an all boys school, you know, people were assholes, and I'd had those kinds of people around me my entire life. So I just went through and kept doing me. You know, I was like, you know, like these people, they're going to try and tear me down, and they are tearing me down. And I feel like shit, I'm still going to do what I'm going to do because that's not going to stop me. But at the same time, I'm very anxious and very, you know, all the different kinds of things. And there have been people I remember along the way that have been there to support me and push me through if I've needed it. And the ArenaNet didn't necessarily push me, but they trusted me and they gave me confidence. So I will never forget them for that. And I will never forget some of the people that did that for me.
Anyone you want to shout out?
Or like Josh Davis, Colin Johansson, for sure. You know, Colin on beta weekend before Heart of Thorns came out at the studio. I think I was on a vacation here with my ex. I went to the studio and just hung out with him and Grouch, Josh Davis, and my ex, like in the studio, just in one of the rooms playing the Heart of Thorns expansion, like, you know, just on beta weekend with them. You know, I mean, when we got married, there was me and my ex like on the top of this building, and I've shared this story before. You know, there's Josh Davis, there's Colin Johansson, there's a ton of ArenaNet devs. You know, these people are my friends, and like I knew them. You know, it's a shame I haven't been able to connect to them as much as I would have wanted to here, especially because of COVID and everything else. And hopefully that's going to change in the future. But we do it in our own way, I guess, from time to time. And you know, I've sat in a pub and I've played board games with Colin. You know, it's weird now. It's just like, yeah, I don't know them well. I don't know them. But I've been friendly with them in different ways where I'm just like, you know, they're just friends now. I think so, and I'm not sure I feel comfortable. I feel comfortable enough saying that. I think they would say the same about me. I'm pretty sure they would.
There's a connection there, and it's not just you broadcaster, them developer. Like there's something more personal there.
Exactly. And it's been the same with, you know, a lot of creators that have gotten the opportunity to interact with them. But, you know, I've interacted with them in so many ways now. And even posts like me and my ex-wife, you know, and with Crucible and like the amount of ArenaNet people who went over to there and, you know, drifted back. You know, I shoutcasted and commentated Crucible and had the same confidence in them there to do what they did.
Right.
And they had that in me again to do that for them.
Okay. And when was so Crucible is one of the things that's on my list to ask you about. I wonder if before I do though, if I could ask you to share any thoughts you have about wow, that was like a lot.
Yes.
I really need to give some verbal attention to the abuse that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely.
Just to acknowledge that I hear that. I heard that. And
you should be a counselor, by the way.
And it was horrible.
This is a very counselor thing to say, that was.
I'm
not joking. It's all about validation. I'm serious. Well, very good.
I do consulting for my day job, which is kind of like counseling for lawyers. So
right, okay.
There's something there, perhaps.
I think so.
In any case, that level of abuse is, of course, not acceptable.
No.
I can almost sort of put myself in the place of you when you mentioned that you received death threats that you chose not to pass on. It's a weird place to be in, because I imagine on the one hand, you knew you were comfortable with some level of violence from your upbringing. So this didn't register for you the way it might register for someone like me who had a pansy-ass upbringing.
When we say upbringing, I don't mean my parents and family. We mean like school and stuff.
We talked about the pub, man.
Yeah. As long as it's just for anyone that's just randomly coming in. I just wanted to pick up my parents or abusive.
Jebro's great parents. Love Jebro's parents.
They were good people.
Yes. But then the choice to not pass that on, it's almost kind of reminds me of the being too honest thing with the drugs and the American process. Like,
Yeah.
if you pass on that information, then suddenly there's a burden of action on whoever you tell, and it's a very
I understand.
it's a very big thing to
Yeah.
take that on yourself and say, I'm going to
Mhm.
I'm gonna take responsibility for dealing with this thing that I should not have to.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really tell anyone about that at the time. I mean, I think later on in counseling and therapy, like when I started to work through all this stuff, like
Yeah.
in the abuse and the bullying and that kind of, which is essentially what it was, and it's essentially sometimes still is. Because I think most content creators get some kind of abuse or bullying or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that as a white man doing this, and I'm part of the I would say the dominant society,
The
which
cultural majority.
which is the most acceptable. Yeah, the cultural majority. And at the moment on Twitch, there's disgusting behavior going on. There's people hate raiding. The racism and everything else that comes out is disgusting and intolerable. And Twitch does nothing about it.
Yeah, the platform feels like it's teetering a little bit on some of these things.
Twitch is its own cesspool of awfulness. That just lets this stuff boil over. It lets it manifest and curdle and just become this almost this worse monster, that just comes together and it just seeps out everywhere, and they don't do fuck all. And it's not good. But you can't talk about that kind of stuff on Twitch because people don't necessarily want to hear about it.
Well, what should Twitch be doing, do you think?
Banning people.
Yeah.
A lot more people. And I know people can make accounts, but they can ban IPs, and I know people can get VPNs, but they need to control their broadcasters more about what they're doing. If someone does something like that, they don't give them a warning, they just ban them.
Yeah.
You get rid of them. But it shouldn't be like, I know freedom of speech is a thing, but racism is actually a crime. Like, you can be like, there are hate crimes that exist that are not okay to be a part of. You can't just spread racial hatred around everywhere. That's like next level shit. It's that bit like, then
yeah, it's the
I don't know.
It's a tough one. Like, there's the incitement to action idea, right?
Yeah.
You think back to like the big kind of current example, or I guess it's not as current anymore, but in America is the January Capitol riots, and Donald Trump seemingly, did he make a call to action there? Should that be a protected speech? It's a tough thing. Yeah, we're in a world now where all these major platforms like Twitch and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter are all having to make decisions about whether they're they are facing the reality that you're describing, while wanting to be a technology company. And the thing is, the kind of problems that you're describing are the kinds of problems things like governments are designed to deal with. Regulatory bodies, not the things that technology companies are made to deal with. And so it's what you're talking about people being assholes, people being racist, like, you can hand out bans for that. I think one of the weird dynamics that I see is like when you see one of the tougher things is when you see communities that seem to be collecting and encouraging that kind of behavior, but not doing it in a way that's like on the nose.
Oh no, yeah, it happens a hell of a lot on Twitch. A lot of white creators do it.
Yeah.
Specifically. And where they, I would even say in the Guild Wars 2 directory as well to a point, but like that's a little bit, that might be a little bit too on the nose for some people, but like I think
Not
it's in every directory, in all honesty. If you think about the dominant culture on Twitch and you think about the creators that are represented at the top, it's mostly white men who are there. And, people are probably cool, they might watch this later and they might say, oh, Jebro PMA and Jebro, woke and all this shit. And it's like, the stuff I do in terms of mental health counseling is thinking about everyone on this planet and thinking about the people who aren't in a position to do the things that a white person is able to do, and try to validate that experience and talk to them about their experience in the world that they live in that I don't know about. And I can only empathize with them about that rather than say, I know. It's like, I hear you. Do you know what I mean? And, whereas I can understand, you can empathize because you can understand about loss and you can feel, understand about things you can't have, but you can't ever be like, I've lived that similar kind of experience because I haven't had to think about walking down the street and people crossing the road because of the color of my skin, or a police car coming past and slowly driving past you.
Yeah.
Or having that conversation when I'm an 8-year-old boy with my parents about how I should act in public. That's not an experience I've ever had or ever will have, unless I have, a kid. And this is with someone else who's not white. And I'm not sure what we were talking about, but like in terms of Twitch, but like, there is this very much, there's still this very privileged experience on Twitch, where if you're a white person, especially if you're a streamer, there isn't going to be racism for you. If anything, all the privileged white kids are watching you. And okay, there are people who aren't as well off watching. There's people who are in different financial circumstances and everything else. Instead, there's these kind of memes and stuff like Pepe the Frog and all this other kind of stuff they use when they say that the Twitch community have appropriated them in a way which is okay for them to use, is not okay. Like, in my opinion. And all these different stuff. And you're just like, this is like things which just get casually thrown out. And who are they thrown out by? And who are they defended by? They're defended by white people at the privileged top end of Twitch, and the people who just keep throwing this stuff out. The whole Pepe the Frog thing, if we want to go there, we can. But like, I might need to educate myself more, but it's pretty much about racism. And we're talking about like loads of stuff which is seated in, Nazi flipping Germany here, and we're talking about so much stuff, and it's just all awful. But like, apparently this is all okay to do, and like there is no governing body, which is kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about governing bodies and people being able to regulate things. There's no regulation on this stuff. There just isn't. And really, the regulators are the Twitch community. There's shout out to Twitch and the hashtag that come out, Twitch do better, Twitch get better. They come out and they say this stuff, and then the hate rates come out. Last year it was all about Black Lives Matter and really putting forward Black creators, African American creators, Asian creators who aren't white, and trying to get those voices and those people up into the upper echelons of Twitch, so the community can be better represented by people who look like other people in the community and who aren't just white. And now we're back to hate rates. Fuck's sake. It's like, there isn't enough white people doing anything about this or talking about it enough, other than the people who need to because of their image. And then I feel bad saying that, but like, this is the kind of shit I talk about on my stream. And I talk about, mental health, and I talk about, the person you're talking to right now is who's streaming. The person you meet if we go down the pub next week. This is the person you're going to be talking to.
Sure.
Sure. And that's never going to get me hundreds of viewers on Twitch. It's never going to put me in the Peachies, the Teapots, the Mogotters, upper echelon. Sorry.
What makes you think that authenticity is working against you?
And I'm not saying they're not authentic in their ways, but I think a lot of people don't like to hear what I say about these things. If that makes sense. It's these very unconscious kind of, it's like, and I kind of want to pull this book out. I've not got it next to me, but I will have to give you it. It's
what is it?
Good Lord, I need to go and get it so I can actually tell you the author. Can you give me 2 seconds? I really want to get this book.
Sure.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, hang out with the chat.
I'm going to get
for it. Give me a second to think as well, which I definitely need to do. Reader Geek's impressed. He's getting a book. Usually it's you. I see.
Okay, this is the book. It's called Race Talk. It's backwards. It's called Race Talk.
Oh, I can read it. Okay.
Gerald Wing Sue. I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you've ever heard of this book.
I haven't. No.
It's a good read, but it's got on the front of it says understanding and facilitating difficult dialogues on race. And basically, it's a book about how we can't talk about racism and we can't talk about our own racism, essentially, our own biases, prejudices, and start having those conversations to start enabling us for change in the future to be more inclusive of diverse cultures and people.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful book, and a lot of what I do with counseling is multicultural, and it is about social justice. And that is something in the world that's very much needed. But because of the internet, because of Trump, and because of, different things as well, it's easier for people to be racist as fuck. It's easier for people to be abusive, which is what we were kind of talking about before.
It is.
Sorry to completely move on to something.
No, this is the real stuff. This is what I signed up for. That's totally fine.
Okay. I'm very passionate about this stuff.
I can tell, and I'm really happy you mentioned it. Because I want to talk to people about what they're passionate about. I want to get to know who they really are. So, like, I'm having a lot of thoughts, but I feel like I want to clarify one thing you just said about the counseling and the social justice. Counseling is usually one-on-one, right?
Yes. Well, or group work.
Okay.
Yeah, which is what I'll be doing as well.
And how does the social justice thing kind of figure into your counseling experience? How would you generally characterize that?
So if I'm a white man counselor,
right?
And I'm a counselor who has even just a white client, to be honest, but a client who is not white, who might be, someone who's just not white, basically.
Yep. Okay.
And thinking about their experience in the world and understanding their experience, but also their experiences of me as a counselor, as their counselor. And thinking about what whiteness is to them and to me. And thinking about, white equals, essentially power to a lot of people who aren't white, right? And who are the people in control. And in the counseling environment, that means I've got a lot of responsibility to try and bring that to a place where they feel equal. Or we feel like we're equal, because of inference of societal bullshit that's been put on us put on people for so long, of how, the white way is the way, essentially. And that's just in counseling, it's all about equality and justice and, having an equal say. And that's the way the world should be, really.
Yeah.
But in counseling, you have to kind of bring that up, essentially.
Sure. My experience receiving counseling, not giving it, is that it kind of matches up with what you were saying there a moment ago about how it's super important to be able to establish a rapport with whoever you're in counseling with, whether you're the counselor or the counseling. Yeah,
that's the base thing. Rapport
and it's kind
of trust. If you haven't got that, it's done.
Yeah, and it's kind of the responsibility of the counselor in that kind of a setting in order to manage that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, how does the person see you? I mean, I've even been in situations with counseling where I'm a physically big dude, and sometimes I'll be meeting with someone who is smaller, and I'll know not to get all up in their face because I don't know what people have experienced, and I think that's a big part of it, right, is respecting the negative space that represents all the things about a person's life you do not know. And in fact, so much of the things that you can never know, even.
Yes.
Um,
or
because
until they're ready, maybe, to talk about it or reveal it. Yeah.
Or because there may not even be awareness of it when you start the relationship, right? A lot of what you said, what you were saying, I kind of think of two different ideas. So one is a recognition of accumulated advantage. I'm trying to find, what's the Bible verse? Let me see if I can quote this properly. The Matthew effect. Okay, so here's the verse from the Bible. It's Matthew chapter 25, verse 29. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. Now that's a brutal sounding thing. That can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. I've heard a lot of different people talk about this idea, and a very simple way of relating it that I think most people have heard is the idea that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But the richness doesn't necessarily have to be monetarily. There could be other ways, right?
Yeah.
So let's think about, I'm going to practice some self-awareness here. And, spoiler, I've done this in the past, so this isn't on the fly, but, and talk about some of the accumulated advantage in my life that I've kind of learned about myself. So, I was a college dropout. College was not kind to me. I was not kind to it. I fell back on my parents after college, which I was able to do because of a privilege that I hadn't earned. That was something that they did, right?
Yeah.
And then I was eventually, years later, able to start a career in technology because I grew up with a computer in the household. And eventually an internet connection, which is not something that I did, right? Yeah. So that advantage put me in a spot where I could start a career without having a college degree in a lucrative field. And I do fine. And that same advantage is what puts me in a position to now broadcast my voice out there. Yeah. Because I understand technology. I've been fluent with it for almost my entire life, right? I'm in my late 30s, more than half my life. And
you're assuming then more than half your life? Please. I'm 40 this year. I expect to live past
finally I interviewed someone older than me.
yeah, that's it, exactly. I'm older than most Guild Wars 2 creators.
Are the geezers, bro?
Probably one of the oldest, actually. I'm not older than Bogart, though. He's older than me.
Well, that's comfortable. Bog honor the grandpa of Guild Wars 2.
Maybe some of the devs you've interviewed are older than you.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But so yeah, thinking about being old.
And Bobby Stein on there, haven't you? I think he's older.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more of people in the on the other side of the community, right?
Yeah.
A bit of a different
Bobby
scene.
Stein's good people.
No. Oh God, love Bobby. Bobby's the man.
Yeah.
Everyone I talk to, awesome people. And someone who also I think really respects this problem. I was talking about accumulated advantage, right? And one of those accumulated advantages is all the stuff that's transpired in the world up till when I was born and became an adult and started to get out in the world on my own faculties.
Yeah.
That made the color of my skin mean certain things. They made the fact that I'm a man mean certain things.
Yeah.
And those are things that I wasn't responsible for. I wasn't responsible for, just like the computer in the household thing. Just like that having parents with some affluence was not something that I did. But if I can become aware of those things, then I can practice more sensitivity about understanding where other people come from. And let me think of a way of putting this. I mean, it's kind of like the idea of checking your privilege. But I see that as a subset of a bigger problem, which is just general awareness. You know, there's this fantastic speech that I've become totally enamored with by an American writer named David Foster Wallace, also a white man, also had rich parents, grew up to be a philosopher, you know, incredible writer. And he did this speech at a college commencement event called "This Is Water," which in general, which if you haven't heard it, highly recommend it. It's like a 20-minute speech. I won't do it justice, but it's a call to action. No, sorry, it's a call to awareness, and it starts with this simple little pithy parable, which I just love, which is, so a couple of fish walking down the street. They pass by an older fish, and the older fish says, "Water feels great this morning." The two fish keep walking. One turns to the other. "What the fuck is water?" You know? Becoming aware of the very things that are so commonplace that they become invisible is an act of it's a conscious act of choice that we must make, right?
Or unconscious as well.
Sure, it's something that we can become prey to. In fact, in this speech, one of the things that he suggests is that if you don't do this, if you don't choose how to direct your awareness, then you kind of regress to a default mode of engagement with the world, which, because we all experience the world through our own senses and our own skin, is this idea of, the way he puts it is, it's an inherently selfish thing. We see the world through our eyes. The idea that the events around us are about us seems completely natural. And the only way to overcome that natural sense that the things that go around us are about us is with awareness, which is a conscious, deliberate act and a lifetime practice. Infinite jest, reader geek. Yes, absolutely. And one of the stories he tells in that speech too later on is a very classic kind of road rage story about, you're on the highway, you're in traffic with a bunch of people, and it feels terrible, right? You hate waiting in traffic. It's one of the worst human experiences you can have, right? This just insane crawl of inanity and human and machine gore, and this sense that there's something deeply wrong with the world and the people in it, right? That's what it is. And that sense will invade you if you do not check your awareness. And if you do check in on and think clearly about what's happening around you, you might realize that people around you might be in an even worse situation than you are, more desperate than you are. You might have a guy with a sick kid trying to get to the hospital. You might have, a police officer who's coming off of a shift where he just had to shoot someone in a situation that he had very little control over, and he had to act the way that he did. You don't know what goes on in people's lives, and you don't have to know, I think, is the sense. What you do is you have to admit the space for things you don't know. And in that sense, awareness, when you engage in that act, the thing you become most aware of is how little you know.
Exactly.
Especially about the lives of other people.
Absolutely.
And
it's difficult.
I've thought a lot about the idea of, oops, I think I just hit a cable and my webcam came loose. Hang on a second. Let me Fonzie the machine here.
It's a great pose.
Hopefully I don't come back purple.
Oh.
We're good? I think we're good.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
The reveal of the green screen.
Yeah, this happened before we started today, and when I came back, all the colors were weird.
It's all good. You're good.
Anyway, so that kind of idea, like I've been in an interview process where I had to, or I was not, thankfully, the person who was responsible for making the decision. But I was a senior member on the team, and I was part of the process, and I made a recommendation about hiring someone, and we had two people who we were considering, and one was an Asian woman, and one was a white dude with a beard, just like me. And one of the questions that came up is, well, okay, do we really want another white dude with a beard on the team? And we had to talk this problem out. And we made the choice we had to make at the end of the day, which was we went with the person who was going to add the most value to the team for their experience and the skills that they were bringing to the on board immediately. We went with the white dude. But we had to ask ourselves. Oh, I hit the thing again.
It looks like you did, yeah.
The internet does not want you to hear this. Hang on.
We want to hear it. Just keep your hand away from the thing.
Yeah, I gotta stop hitting the desk for emphasis. All right, hands off. And it's hard to know how to act in that situation. I think if you look at it without context, it can be the thing that one might say is, well, we need to make sure that the person with the least amount of privilege is the one that's brought in to equalize the problem. And this is part of an approach to solve a bigger problem in our society. And it makes me sympathetic to like affirmative action type initiatives for that reason, because even though those solutions might not make the most sense at the individual scale, over a broad scale, they could make a big difference. So I'm sympathetic to that kind of approach, even though I understand the specific reasons it might not seem to be the best choice for individual roles or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess like the overall sense that I have when I see this conversation is there are voices on both sides of that kind of, let's say, schism about how to engage with race problems. Sorry, not race problems. Let's put it a different way. How to engage with the major gaps in our culture between people. And you see, I think I see voices on both sides that are very focused on what everything means to them as individuals. And those are the voices that I try not to give too much weight to in my consideration. Because at the end of the day, where am I going with this thought process?
You sound like me.
I guess this is one of the problems of our time. You know, I think back to when I was in high school in like the late 90s. And the way that the homosexuals were treated in Western culture. Think about the crazy,
which is not the word we should use even now as well.
Yeah, I mean, I might be screwing that up. It wouldn't be the first time I've screwed something like this up out of ignorance.
No, but that's totally right. That's awareness again, and sometimes that takes someone else pointing them out. Like, you know,
right.
The term homosexual is highly offensive now.
What's the better term to use?
Gay.
Gay? See,
gay, bisexual, lesbian, like whatever you whatever they want to be identified as. But most people don't want to be identified as homosexual.
Okay. Gay. Then. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm referring to.
Or a member of the LGBTQIA plus community.
Right. Absolutely.
There you go.
But I think back to 20 years ago, the place in Western culture that people in that community had versus how that's changed in the last 20 years as I've grown up. And it's changed dramatically to the point where we can have a conversation like this, that if it had happened in a broadcast medium in the late 90s, people would have laughed. And maybe there will still be laughter. You can't control that.
I mean, there's phrasing and diagnoses in the DSM-5 right now, which is the mental health Bible basically for diagnoses, which still have, in the version before this, being gay was a mental condition. And now, the trans folks, like basically they have there's a diagnosis in the DSM-5 now, which is called gender dysphoria, which is a disorder. You know what I mean? Like, and like things like that needing to be changed. Like, there is a lot of stuff in the world which is just like our terminology for things. Like, you say the term homosexual, like, you know, and many people still say that without knowing that actually, you know, people do find that phrase in as like a definition offensive. Like, and I'm not calling you out on that. Like, you know, that's something people just don't know.
I don't mind if you call me out on it.
This stuff. Exactly. Like, you know, I mean, and it's like, you know, my dad still, like, you know, people say these words and they don't know what they mean, and they don't know because maybe know by the communities and everything else. But I'm lucky enough to have these conversations daily in my classes and programs to the point where, you know, I wouldn't have known to not say that word. You know, I wouldn't have known to say loads of words that I said. You know, growing up as a kid, you know, saying something was gay meant that it was bad. You know,
yes.
Oh, so gay, what are you doing? Like, do you know what I mean? And like,
yes,
you know, that going out of that language is like changing so much about yourself, because you're essentially changing yourself. And like you said, essentially at the beginning of this whole conversation, which is what it's about, is being aware about yourself, your language, and how your impact on how you impact other people in how you behave out there in the world. And that's essentially what, you know, we're talking about, right? Right at the beginning of this conversation, with streamers, with the racism, with everything else, because it's how you act in a way is, you know, is a role model. But people don't want to see this stuff. People don't want to recognize this stuff because they don't want to recognize this stuff in themselves. And then when we see streamers talking about things like they're talking about, I don't want to say exact streamers because I'm calling people out, but there are people I've heard talking about using these new phrases and talking about, you know, the depression, or like talking about how they're depressed when they, like, you know, oh, this thing happened, they're so depressed, like in the game. Like, you know, they're using a term which is like a real term for like pain and anguish and stuff.
OCD
like,
also used that way a lot of the time.
Yeah, like exactly. Like OCD, like people when they say these things like that, oh yeah, I must have OCD. Like when I was talking to you earlier, I realized that maybe, you know, that may have sounded a bit like that, but I genuinely actually think I do have ADHD.
And like that's a funny thing. And like, but our language is referential by nature.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It can be hard to distinguish between, are we trying to evoke a sense of this thing, or are we talking about, no, actually, this is the thing?
Yeah, exactly. And there's people like, I mean, I don't like the term. I really don't like the term. But like, this is a term, but I shouldn't even saying that, it's bad. There was a big thing, like, especially in the Guild Wars 2 community, where cuck was a word, in a phrase which is used, which is like cuckold. And that's like a kink of a community, which is a pleasurable thing by a community which should be respected. It's not a thing where, you know, people are saying this is a word which is appropriated by, you know, white flipping kids, essentially, and like people in their early 20s were assuming this is a bad thing. Oh, you're such a cuck, or you're a simp, or you're all these different words. When to a community, this is actually a very pleasurable, kink-oriented community that get behind these things, and that's their thing. And you don't fucking yuck someone's yum as long as it's respectful and, you know, flipping pleasurable to other people.
That's great.
You know, I enjoy MMORPGs. People don't fucking understand my life. I don't fucking expect them to, but I don't want them to go outside and start fucking talking bullshit about it. You know, it's respectful. It's not hurting anyone. If it gets out of control, becomes an addiction, that's up to me to get myself out of that, and other people to maybe talk about that with me. Until it becomes anything like that, you know, that's my thing. That's my jam. You know, we've all got shit about us that, you know, we might be ashamed of. But to be fair, there are people out there who aren't ashamed about that shit. And I'm, you know, fucking I'm jealous of those people. But like, do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
I do. And, you know, I learned something interesting about Tourette's syndrome the other day. For those who don't know, Tourette's is a neurological disorder where essentially it causes people to do things like swear uncontrollably. And what that turns out to kind of suggest is that there is a part of our mind that is concerned with swearing and knows what a swear word is.
Being bad.
Yeah, and it might say something like cuck, depending on the person. Um, there's a need to have these kinds of epithetical terms, and how do you pick them? Like the classics are like asshole, body part, dick, body
Yeah.
part, uh, um,
The C word.
yeah, which I was just about to ask myself if I want to say that one out loud because that has a connotation, a pejoratively
But then
feminine
women have
connotation.
that word associated with them, and men
Yes.
have dick, which we can say, and which is
Yeah,
worse.
but
And that's awful.
it's more okay to say dick because men are understood to be in a more culturally dominant position than women, generally speaking. And that's
It's wrong, isn't it?
well, I'm just trying to understand, man. I'm still not sure I know what's right or wrong.
When you get that, well, I mean, it's wrong in terms of the fact that that's the way it is. Like we should be like, why is it that the essentially the body part of a woman is the most insulting word we can say?
Right.
And why is that for a start? I mean, that's another conversation for another day, I think. But like,
Uh-huh.
there's no, and then for men, it's like, and men use it like as
Sure.
openly about anyone or anything. And it's that's a very awkward conversation to have, and one I'm not sure we should probably have right now because I'm not sure how to go there.
Maybe
And I
it
think
shouldn't be
that's
the
okay
two
to
of us
say.
having that conversation. Yes.
Yeah, and I would like
And
to have a woman here to talk about that.
Which casts a light on this whole discussion, right? Because
Or anyone, really.
we're just white dudes hashing it out. How
Exactly,
do we?
and I feel bad about that as well.
And I think the thing that a lot of people in positions similar to where I'm coming from, maybe you can speak for yourself, is that there's a sense of frustration with this idea of feeling guilty about that we should feel guilty about something that it doesn't feel like we're responsible for. And that's a very tough thing, I think, for a lot of people, especially if they're operating in a mindset, which is the idea that, like the default mindset that I mentioned about this kind of automatic sense that the world is kind of here for us. It's about that everything that happens around us is about us. And I say this not trying to point at other people as being bad because I do this too. Like it happens to me all the time. Every single morning when I wake up, I'm pretty convinced that the world is out to get me, man. My alarm's going off. I got a meeting to get to. I got to feed the cat. Like, woe is me. I'm the most miserable human on earth. Of course, I'm not. Coffee typically helps fix that. A shower helps fix that. Anyway, I digress. It's I'm deeply aware of the need to heal the cultural rifts that we have, and I'm also aware that we're in a time where the attention on those rifts is more is there's so many different ways to approach this problem. The reason I wanted to bring up the thing about the pejorative use of the term gay, which was prolific when I was in high school.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is because the way that we see gay men, especially, has transformed dramatically in most of Western culture that I've been a part of anyway in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing similar shifts try to happen in other parts of our society where we're recognizing people who maybe we as a society should say, hey, like, we want to include you people too.
Yeah.
And it is an iterative process. It takes place over time, and it takes people stepping up and saying, hey, here's my experience. It takes people who are in a position to do so saying, I see you, I want to help you. And I understand why there's a kind of sense of wanting to opt out of the discussion, especially if you're someone who doesn't have it as a problem you face. If I'm me, like I'm a white guy, like I don't really face racism. I don't have to deal. People have called me fat growing up, but that kind of fell off in the last decade. No one really says that anymore. And but I don't have to deal with this stuff. And if I don't engage my awareness, it becomes more easy or more comfortable to kind of mentally opt out of that problem that is still happening around me, but
because
that I don't feel, right?
Yeah. That's what most people do. Most white people do. That's me assuming something, but I feel like that's a correct thing to say.
And you know, one of the things, like a meta commentary on just the blabbing that I'm doing here, is like
You're working things out, I think.
You can see me working them out. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly the way I feel. And a big part of that is because it is so.
Like I'm going to be a counselor or something, isn't it?
It is.
Not that I'm doing counseling here, because I would never do that on Twitch.
I'm opening the door.
It's not an ethical thing for me to do, but that was just me saying a thing.
Yeah, no. I took it in the spirit it was offered. Okay. But there are a lot of opportunities for. I have found it difficult to talk to people about this.
Yeah, of course. Fuck yeah.
It is people really hard.
For this conversation,
it is really hard to talk to people. Even people who know me well, even people who love me. It is very hard to open the door on this.
Parents and even brothers and sisters and best friends that you've known for God knows
how long.
No.
And
absolutely.
It's really hard because.
So can you imagine what having a community is like on Twitch, where you can have those conversations? And how many people are ready for that conversation who stick around for those conversations?
I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm talking about.
And
they don't want those conversations. They don't want to be faced by it. And that kind of
highlights what you the tweet that you made that I was gonna, that I thought what this is gonna be about, and I didn't realize there was this much on the other side of it. But you were being called out for being too woke or being cringe, is what you said in your tweet. Yeah, because you had said that you're working on trying to gender neutralize your language where you can.
Yep.
You know, walking around the city, and I do live in a city, if I meet someone who I befriend, one of the questions that I might have been asked like a decade ago is, "Oh, do you have a wife or a girlfriend? Are you married?" You know, someone trying to get to know me. But these days, I'm a lot more likely to be asked, "Do you have a partner?"
Oh, no.
People are there's a cultural awareness of plurality there that is just a matter of leveling up over time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in that context, the most grievous error would be convincing yourself that you can completely opt out of this thing that's happening. That doesn't have to be your problem. I kind of see, and I've said this in podcasts in the past, that like what I think I'm doing when I'm doing a podcast is I'm trying to collaborate with people with different experiences about understanding how to live.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean that generally. I mean that quite selfishly. Like I'm really on a quest, man. I'm really trying to figure this thing out. And I don't remember where I was going to go with that. Oh, I think I should toss it back over to you, Ben. I've been like jabbering. Counselor Jebro strikes again.
Sorry, dude. This and you're tired. It's tiring. It's not easy.
It is.
At the same time, you're trying to talk about this stuff in a way where language is a very important thing to use. Like language is important. How we say stuff is fucking important.
Yeah.
How we say stuff and then how it's portrayed around the world on screen to, there's 16 people here now, right? But there's clips. This is on Twitch. This will go on YouTube. This is still something that my community might share around. Someone else who doesn't like me could clip a thing where I say something and it may have sounded inappropriate out of context when we're having this conversation. So you have to be careful about your language, but also just how people talk about things generally, and our wording about just anything and our even learning. Like, I'm not saying that I am some PMA hardcore. I'm not like, social justice warrior is used in a very negative way. I feel like some people, when people use that terminology, they're not ready to look at themselves in a way where they can be like, am I racist? Do I have these biases? Am I behaving in a way which might be considered, not cool, basically, and that's a very, very, very underestimated statement right there. And because people just aren't freaking ready for it. And that's what this book is about. And I would go and say, like, especially because I feel like you would read this. And I know it might be backwards. I'm sorry about that. But there's loads of books. There's someone called D-Ray who's on Twitter, and he writes about his own experience. And he's got very intersecting identities. Now, when we talk about intersectionality, we're talking about our different identities that literally intersect with each other. So we're talking Black, and this is for people who are listening or watching. It's more of an educational thing for them, I suppose, or maybe for you, I don't know. But when someone is maybe Black, maybe they're gay as well, and maybe they're disabled. They intersect across 3 different identities, which all are very marginalized within our society. So not only are you dealing with being Black, you're dealing with being Black and being gay and being disabled, maybe. And he talks about how he is a Black gay man in the world we live in, and how he participated in, different protests, and how he is a very big social justice advocate, and obviously mental health and everything else as well.
I'm sure part of the complexity of living a life like that would be like not quite being accepted by what are usually supportive communities for any part of that their identity, right?
It's difficult because there is those, because within those communities, yeah, exactly, there is their own things, within the gay community there is racism, within within disabled communities there is also racism, because these things are also in those communities. But then when you have white society, which is, able-bodied white male, like imagine a person who is Black, disabled and gay coming into a workplace which is white dominated or something like that. Can you imagine the different things that could be? There's 3 different communities this person's from.
It's a harder hand to play, harder hand to play.
It's like, and it's about, knowing about all this kind of stuff. And it's just a very interesting book talking from his perspective, and then talking about police and, police brutality against African Americans. And just, it's just a really eye-opening book. And just all of this stuff, all this material I have from even my program has just changed a lot of what I think and feel. And not that I wasn't racist or anything before, but I definitely probably had biases that I grew up with that I didn't really know, my parents maybe had when they were growing up, and things that are just inbuilt, which, I'm very aware of now, and I can make some change in my own life. And then, talking about this kind of stuff on my stream at times when it's appropriate is something I feel like I should do and should put out into the world.
If it's you, man, the best thing you can be on stream is you, right?
That's what I believe, but I don't feel like there's not many people to do that. I don't think, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that people need they need a thing where they can be, they can see that cheery, happy face on stream every day, and they can get their joy from that. They can see that memey, ridiculous person on stream, and they can get their joy from that as well. We're all different. But I have I want to put out my most genuine, authentic, real self, because that's important to me in everything I do. And that is my decision. But the thing is, I connect with the people in the hard community who are here now. Some of them, they support me in what I do, and I probably, in a funny way, like I think a lot of partner streamers, or a lot of people who have more viewers than me, maybe, or who hear that I do this full time, and they see me having like lower than 30 viewers sometimes, or sometimes they see me having more than that, don't understand how I can do what I do. One, I'm clever about how I've done this, because I've been doing this for a while. 2, I have very, very supportive community, and mods that really care about what I do and my message, and they believe that as well. And also just the support that they have, like, you know, they will come out for me, and if I need to pay the bills or if I need to do that or the other, there'll be a ton of people who would just randomly be there to help me. And it's not a feeling, I don't feel like it's a feeling of sorry for me thing. I don't think it's like I don't think it's pity or anything like that. I think, you know, they just genuinely want me to be there doing my thing every day.
I talked to Peachy about this last week, Aurora Peachy. She told a story about how her community came together and kind of collectively built her first legendary, Sunrise, and they're on the stream, and how she felt very sure that was a real genuine moment that was done by a community coming together to do something for that community, and it wasn't for her. It wasn't about her getting something, and for the community members, it wasn't about them like buying screen time on the stream, which is the thing that I think the sort of cynical argument of reducing those actions down to. But what the truth that cynical interpretation leaves off the table is that people need fellowship. People need other people. And when there's an opportunity to, when there's, you know, I'm tempted to call on another reference. You know, one of the streamers who I really admire is Healthy Gamer GG. Are you familiar?
Yeah.
You know them? Sounds like you have some thoughts there. I'll ask you about that in a minute. But one of the things that one of the questions I saw the guy who's at the head of the stream, a guy named Dr. K, talk about was about this sense that gamers often have about, man, I wish that like life would challenge me. Like, I just need to be like put in a situation where I can really show my stuff. We all have this sense of wanting to be a part of something bigger. And Twitch communities can, and I think the main thing they do is serve that need for people. And there's nothing unnatural about that. And showing up with your hard-earned resources, your energy that you earn from your job or however it came to you, there's nothing unnatural about that at all, I think. So, anyway, about people coming together, and I wanted to say that about your anecdote about people in your community coming together to support you. And when there's a moment when you need it, you, the person who's the kind of face of the community, of course people want to jump in and be a part of facing the dragon, you know?
Yeah. I get that. I get what you're saying. It's not even like because I'm very I've always been very paranoid about getting help from people, because I've always very much tried to just go on my own, and I still very much do, because of what we've talked about throughout this podcast. Yeah, it's just like, you know, there's me always just taking risk, and it's always me alone. So accepting money and subs and all the other things, like, is a very big experience for me.
Really? Okay.
I even someone subscribing once is like why are you giving me this thing? You should be helping me. Like, there's a very big battle that goes on within myself. When I get a subscription, when I get a donation, when someone helps with a sponsorship, like today, like people helping with this Vikings clan sponsorship we're doing at the moment.
Okay.
And anything. So it's very difficult to, because I essentially am selling myself. I am the experience, but like I always talk about the community. I never say my community, because I very much talk about the stream is its own thing, and the community is the experience and the thing that people buy into. They're not buying into just me. I am just the face of it.
Right. You are serving a role within the community. Just the most publicly visible role.
Yeah, yeah. That's how I like to see it.
Uh-huh.
And when people talk about their communities and stuff on Twitter and everyone else, they always say my community. And it always interests me, that saying. And I think that's fair, that people can say that they've earned that because it's formed around them.
You know, I've
so
thought that too.
But it's not really theirs. It's when they say, and this is just my opinion, and we all have different experiences of this. But whenever someone says my community, I always think, well, it's you kind of, it's around you, but it's not yours, because there's many people in that community which form it.
Yeah.
Like, without you, maybe it wouldn't exist, but they would exist elsewhere in different communities, and it's a culmination of many people. It's like
you're the seed, but you're not the fully grown tree that comes from it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I think a community is where, the best communities are the ones which thrive around people not being the center of the attention the whole time, because they're talking to each other and still creating these connections within this group. And that's the important thing for me that I want to always achieve. Like, I think of people a lot, I do talk in my Discord a bit here and there, but I don't talk all the time to try and encourage growth or to get partnership and all this kind of stuff, because I want that kind of thing to develop naturally. And I want that to happen with people like that guy in chat called Demonic, who's an arsehole. But you know what I mean? Like, I know these people well. All the people in chat, they're awesome members of my community. There's a couple of mods there, and Rage Geeking Jactress, who I've known for so long.
They're following you here. That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Like, I've tweeted out a couple of times, I put it in Discord, but they're always there. And like these people, I consider my friends. Like, I know them very well now. And there's Zorik in there as well, who I've been on podcasts with. Interacted with many times now. There's loads of people in the chat who are here just hanging out and they're chilling. But and some of them have been here for ages. Some of them know me when I was doing my casting back then. They've I might stream a random game, I might get 10 viewers, but they're there, and I know that the Twitch viewership is not a representation of me. And it's difficult. On days where there's and I might say out loud like something like, it feels really quiet in here, I might pop off early, and I say it out loud, but because I put these thoughts out into the world, and that's what I do. And I'll do it. I'll leave early or whatever. But the thing is that the stream isn't the be all and end all. The viewership isn't the be all and end all of that. And I think there's always this push for likes and viewership and everything else. Whereas actual viewer numbers are important, obviously, because there's more people, it's more bodies essentially donating, subscribing, and doing all this stuff. What happens if you move game? Like, what happens if your schedule switches? What happens if that stream isn't there anymore? Does your community just immediately fall apart? Like, what happens? Like, if I didn't stream for a month, I know that I would probably be fine. Probably, like, from the different places where monetarily maybe I'm supported, probably I would have difficulty for sure. Yeah. But if I came back in a month, I know that would probably then be okay again. And I'm not saying I don't have any anxieties about these things. I always do. Every single day I'm filled with anxiety about how many people are going to get in the stream.
Right.
Because I'm not a teapot. I'm not a Nora RPG. I'm not a Bogger. I'm not and I compare myself to these people every day.
Yeah,
whereas I feel like, they 100% compare themselves to other streamers as well every day.
Right.
And it bounces up. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, but I am so everywhere. Like, I am literally like, tomorrow I could stream and I could have 30 viewers. Next day I could have 150. The next day I could have 12. It really is like a massive swing. And I just risk it. I just do whatever I want most of the time. I will still have in the back of my head, like, that didn't work, so I won't necessarily do that. Like, I really love playing Sea of Thieves, for example.
Sure.
Like, I really love playing Sea of Thieves, but the community just isn't there for that. So what do? I go and commentate it to get my fix. Like, I get my fix of
Ah,
what I need to do in a different way.
right.
Like, and I've hosted now I've been actually presented on the official Sea of Thieves Twitch channel as well.
That's
I've been
cool.
doing that recently. It's very cool.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I have my own show there for like a one session the other week as well. And it was like, I am known to a lot of people, to a lot of developers, to a lot of people in different communities. I'm not a massive streamer, but people know who I am. And
Right.
that is, I feel like that's pretty cool.
It is,
I'm
man.
very proud of that.
I
am proud of that.
It's a very different kind of currency to be well connected and to have trusting relationships with people who are in the business, in the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I understand like it's kind of natural in any kind of, and I'm going to use the word hierarchy here, but I use that term very kind of loosely. I'm thinking about Twitch viewership here. It's natural to look at any kind of hierarchy you're in and look at the person who you feel is above you, and try to. And the good thing about doing that is to try to learn from people who are getting more attention. It's hard though to take that learning in context. Like just a brief anecdote of my own, if you'll indulge me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I'm pretty new to the whole content game. I've only been doing this since the start of last year, and I didn't really understand what streaming would be for me, why I would do it. There's even an argument for what I'm doing here to be done offline. I think the reason that I stream these podcasts is, number one, to give people a chance to be here for it. And number two, it's because it's what gets me dialed in. It's what I need. I have this like performer part of my personality. Always have. I think it's from being a choir boy growing up. But then what else is there? For a little while, I experimented with streaming myself playing games, and I kind of figured out, okay, that's not what I'm about. So one of the things I've really learned about is that, or I've learned about myself is that, is to not compare myself too closely to people who are concerned with streaming themselves playing video games. Because it's almost like the fact that we're both on Twitch and there's a viewer number next to our names suggests that we're part of the same hierarchy, but really we're not. Really, there are differences, and I think that's sort of kind of a little bit what you're saying. Like, yes, you may not have most people viewing you on Twitch on any given day, but there are parts of you and who you are, things that you recognize that allow you to have these relationships that maybe people who are going for those big numbers don't get.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just the opportunities that I get in comparison to them that actually might have a lot more weight and worth than I maybe even realized myself. Like,
dude, you've been partnered with so many different games that I've heard of. Like you of course, Guild Wars 2 we talked a bunch about. We haven't even talked about Elder Scrolls Online. We haven't even talked about Crucible. We haven't even talked about Sea of Thieves till you name drop that. Like all of those is just like bang, bang, bang. Like this keeps happening to you. Yeah.
It's because of opportunities. It's funny, like, and I'm going to tell you something about my own personal counseling. I actually still have a counselor. I still have a therapist.
Sure.
And when I first went and saw her, she it's probably even this phrasing is going to be incorrect, but this is what I said or thought at first. I thought she was very, very much a very hippie counselor. Right?
Okay.
And that's such an awful word to use, right? But she talks about tarot. She does like a lot. She does some tarot stuff, but she's very much like clinically trained, and she kind of has. There's all this there's this mathematical stuff which she drops in as well. And it's not really necessarily that kind of stuff which has meaning for me. It's how she links it to me and how I get my own meaning from it. Because I've said to her, I'm not sure this is my jam in all honesty, but I get what you're saying, but I can totally understand this because of my life and where this goes. And she was basically talking about, before I told her anything about this, she was talking about my, the feeling she got about it. I think she gave me like a reading, which was very about my life and what I'd been doing in my life and everything else. And she saw the opportunities that I'd taken. She said something to me, and she said, as long as you are always creating opportunities for yourself, you're always going to be okay. And then I said something, and then I was thinking about, and then I started talking about my life, and I was like, I've always tried to create opportunities for myself.
Yeah. Kicking down the door is what I was saying earlier. Yeah. I totally agree with that.
And like, I am very privileged. Again, it's important to recognize that I've been able to do that for a start. So I recognize and understand that. But at the same time, I have done that. And it is, it is something I can, be proud of. And yeah, I've got privilege to do that. Where into a point where, I want to make sure that I also put into the world there's things that I learn about myself and try and maybe influence or be a role model to people to do better to do better for themselves, to do better for the people in the world and the communities in the world that need people like me, a white man, to speak up for whatever, whether or not it's social justice, whether or not it's equality, whether or not it's for I don't know, whatever cause you want to talk about, but
I mean, the human experiment has human solutions, like, and you're just you're stepping in and saying, I'm part of it. That's what it's all about, man.
Yeah, and all you can do is, and again, back to that kind of all the different things, is my life and how I like to live life and how I want to live my life. And that's by experiencing as much of life and as much of people that I can until the day I die. But it's funny in a way because over the last 5 years I've been very stationary in where I've been physically. But I've been able to branch out online and do these different things in a different way, and I feel like whereas I would like to go out more and do more things, obviously COVID helps to stay at home a little bit more and do that. I still realize that I have my anxieties about going out into the world and doing my stuff. Internship is coming up next month and I'm nervous as fuck.
Sure.
I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to do it and do my best. And I know I will. And I know, streaming is going to take a drastic change. That's going to be a big flip, like how that's going to work. That's my job. That's how I pay the bills.
Yeah. It's scary to look ahead to that and be like, I'm not sure how it's going to work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it all changed, like, because it's practicum, and then some of these guys are here, and in fact, see, I said guys, right? So that's already in my head. I've said the wrong thing. These folks. Yeah, see, exactly. But I say that as well. Whenever I say something that I always say, right, I've got to make sure I at least acknowledge that so that I know that, again, I said it's so long and it's not like, just language.
One of my favorite words that I learned from living in the South for a bunch of years, y'all. Great word.
Exactly, yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, I've said folks a bit more. Personages, I say. Peeps.
Personages? Oof, that's rough on the tongue.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's why I say peeps more now.
Peeps, yeah. Peeps, okay. Okay. Yeah, it's not
very
easy.
Stereotypically manly or anything, but stereotypically manly is toxic masculinity. So fuck that shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, there are aspects of masculinity that are good. It's when things are overbalanced or unaware that they can be toxic, right? And I think that goes for anything. But I'm not trying to excuse toxic masculine behavior. Absolutely sucks. Fuck it. And it's doubly bad because in a lot of situations, men are in a culturally dominant position. So it's like the thing that you abhor, the thing that we all instinctively abhor is improper use of power. We're into the political conversation, every single conversation, like there's this passage, another biblical passage that I think of. I'm not going to quote it exactly, but it's one we've all heard about. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Right. Which it sounds like a validation of submissive or passive behavior. I've done some research on it, and my understanding of it has evolved because what I understand that the word meek has changed over time. It used to be that meek actually, meeking was a process that described the breaking of a wild horse into a working horse, especially war horses. Um, and
Okay.
and so meeking, being meek, when that word was used the way it was when it was translated, could more accurately, potentially, and I'm not an authority on this subject, I'm just a lay person who's very curious,
Yeah.
be understood as blessed are those who are strong and practice restraint, for they shall inherit the earth. People who have ability, but also the awareness to wield that power properly.
Fuck.
Right?
How many people? It's like, so blessed are hardly anyone.
Right. And that's why that interpretation of that passage compels me so much, because it is an aspiration to a human quality that we all instinctively recognize and that we all wish for ourselves and for people who we know and love. To become competent and then to use that competence to do good. And doing good doesn't just, it means both doing good for yourself and it means doing good for the world around you.
In the world, absolutely.
Yeah, it's you don't get to opt out of the world and you don't get to opt out of yourself, because
that's the problem. That's the problem. Many people do, and like we were talking about that earlier with Twitch, many people do. Like many people don't talk about that shit. Like, you know, there's a lot of people. There's a lot, like, especially in like, to harp on. It might sound like I'm harping on with people watching this video and like, oh, Jebro's been, but like. But like, you know, it's important, and this is the thing. This is that even that's coming up in people, and that is a rejection of thinking and talking about it and being in the world with other people that aren't privileged, like the person who probably thought that exact thing that I just said. And you know, part of the problem on Twitch is the privileged people that don't talk about this kind of stuff. The people that say, you know, I don't want to talk about politics and religion on this stream,
opting out
because it is like, this isn't the place to do that. We just want to have fun. Now, people that do that, that is fair enough. Like, I mean, you manage your community the way you want to do it, and the only way that kind of conversation becomes disrespectful and mean is because and horrible is because of the community that you form to have those conversations in the first place. If your stream can't have a respectable conversation about religion or about politics or about race or about anything like that, then one, your community and you are not mature enough to be in that place to have that conversation, and that's fair and understandable. And you've got some learning to do, and so is your community, and that's okay. But like, that is the kind of community that you are the head of, essentially. When I know earlier we were talking about communities and being the head of it. At the end of the day, you are the one who is on screen, and your behavior is role modeled out to your model is
absolutely
out to your community. The way you act, the way you behave will be a model to the people who would be attracted to your stream. If I am in this way where I am attracting people who are respectful, who are thinking about people outside themselves, who are, you know, a bit ridiculous and don't mind about being silly and putting themselves out there, you know, I'm going to attract those kinds of people, hopefully. And sometimes, you know, that is too real for people. And a lot of the time they don't want that all the time, and that's okay. But, you know, and some people want to be all smiles and, you know, pretty lights and colors all day, every day. And that's fine. You know, and people, like I said earlier, that they need that. And then sometimes those are the people who will not be able to have those conversations within their community without it erupting, or without the fear of it erupting as well. And that's happened. Those conversations happen in loads of channels every day in a very like disrespectful way, and where people from diverse and marginalized communities feel very, very, very
left out.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you know, attacked, or any word which basically singles them out. And they won't be able to speak out about this because they want to be part of that group. They want to be part of that popular part of society, or that popular stream, or that popular whatever. So our responsibility as streamers, as broadcasters, and people talk about this a lot all the time on Twitter, and the section I get on Twitter is very heavily catered to me and my interests, and is always talking in its own bubble about this kind of shit every single fucking day. Is we must respect people, racism is bad, all this kind of stuff. But the problem is that is not getting outside our bubble. The only time it gets outside our bubble is when someone abusive comes in and comments on that. Then the bubble rally around this one person, call them the worst, that they are a shit person, that they are the worst thing ever.
Right.
And then that person is exited out of the conversation. There's no change and nothing happens at all. And that is the problem with doing that kind of thing. So like whenever anyone comes into my channel and there's some kind of abuse, or there's something said against me, or there's some kind of racist remark, I first say, and I say this to the mods, and it's taken a lot to get them to also do this as well, because I feel like our community are able to take this kind of conversation and to talk about it.
Yeah.
And to not single the person out and say, you're awful. You're terrible. We want to ban this person, get them out straight away. So have a conversation with them in chat. And so let's say that I can have that conversation. If I can have that conversation as the person who is on screen, seeing this person verbally abuse me, or say something about, PMA shit or being woke or whatever, then that allows them to maybe bring out the strength in them to have those conversations, not only just in chat, but with people in their family, with people at home, with people, with friends, with people in their workplace. And I feel like that modeling is an important thing to do for my own sake, as my influence on Twitch and the community that I try to kind of have.
I totally love that. I totally love that and appreciate that and resonate
that
with
makes
that.
sense?
It does. It does. No, and I actually want to reflect what I think is a relevant anecdote that kind of has a similar vibe to it.
Right.
Because like a couple things occur to me. Number one, just very quickly, like when you're in a culturally dominant position, in a debate or difficult situation, opting out is almost like it can be an unconscious act of, I don't like to use the word oppression lightly. I mean, I really don't like to. It's a really heavy word
It is
in a lot of
oppressive.
ways.
But, you're right, though.
And it's one of those things to be aware of. And it's one of the reasons I don't like to opt out of these kinds of issues. I think, like, for me, when I kind of first realized that this is the way I wanted to be on my stream, was a very stupid little snipey comment someone made on my stream. At the start of this year in 2021, I started doing every single week a solo stream, which is up till then, all my conversations were with people. But I started doing my own thing, calling it Deeg Thoughts. Very, very clever. Some people understand that I'm punning on deep thoughts, and then when I explain that to them, I feel very stupid because I thought that was obvious. But anyway,
self-degradation doesn't fly with me, my friend.
But anyway, I was talking about an issue in the Planetside community, Planetside 2.
Yeah.
So the sequel to Planetside 1. And some guy just drops into my stream and asks me what my character name is in game. And then it says something along the lines of, and I can't remember exactly, something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, you're a fat nerd. Figures that you play Vanu," or something like that. I can't remember exactly what he says. He made fun of my appearance and linked it to my stats. So the guy insulted my ability to play the game, my fitness for commenting on the game, and the way I looked all in one go.
Damn.
And it's like, it was right at the start of my stream too, so it was like, brrr. But I took that, and I took that, and I invited the conversation. I invited this person to talk to me, and they still haven't accepted my invitation and ever since then, I've kind of realized, oh yeah, like if I want to be anything, if I'm going to make any progress on understanding what all of this is about, I cannot opt out of the stuff that's uncomfortable. And I've been looking at like everything that's been going on with Activision Blizzard lately.
Oh god.
And which
Jesus.
is a fascinating, which is a terrible shitstorm that also, I don't know. I don't. It is a very complicated and difficult situation that is a unfortunately useful shorthand for a broader problem, and it just sucks. It just sucks.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I've had trouble with in contending with that problem is watching what looks like WoW creators taking this moment over the life course of their game that they care about and using it as an excuse to get on their pulpit about what's wrong with the game. Right? Like, oh yeah, things at Blizzard are bad, but you think things at Blizzard are bad? You won't believe how bad it is for me when I play this game, is the sense that I get, right? And when you hear stuff like that, it kind of makes you cringe.
Well, it's the privileged part of that person's life that they get to play this game, and they completely separate themselves. That's the feeling I get. They separate themselves from the experience that's actually being had, or even having the conversation about it in the first place, and that's fine. Like that's.
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, cringe is a very, very light-hearted way of saying probably what many people feel, maybe even what you feel about that.
No, I think that's fair. Like I don't want to be overly hyperbolic about it because I'm not trying to sensationalize it. I'm trying to treat it seriously.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
One of the things I try to remember, and especially there's this interesting duality, right? There's this interesting perhaps you can call it a dialect.
It's important to say that some people are just not ready to talk about shit like that as well. And like, I'm not trying to. There's something I really want to make sure that I say as well is that I don't think that I am some kind of better place than most of humanity or anything, or like I'm some kind of high. I make mistakes every day. I'm a fucking moron most of the time. But like,
Me too, bro.
And I'm just trying to say I'm trying to do the best I am trying to do. And a lot of people, it took me till I'm almost 40, to get to this point where I can think about other people in this way. And it's not necessarily something everyone's able to do. And there's got to be some empathy in that as well, in the fact that some people just can't. And it's not even empathy, it's just understanding that's not an easy thing for everyone to do because of their family, because of their friends, because of the position they're in. But people who are in part of dominant society, before any change can happen, have to look at themselves and their privilege. And if they don't, there will be no change in this world.
Yeah,
and that's just a hard fact, really.
I agree with you too. And the interesting thing is, like, one of the things that really provokes awareness is pain, right?
Yeah.
So I think for me, I think it's important for everyone to aspire to awareness of where they are, what their actions mean, what their words mean. But it's kind of like, we're talking about people in more advantageous positions in the world. I kind of tend to think of it in terms of like parent-child at times. I know this is a very let's say an exaggerated framework of looking at this problem. Like someone who is a anyway, you understand what I mean. But the reason I bring this up is because if a parent and a child are involved in a situation where there's a problem, we all understand that the person with the most advantage is the person who has the most responsibility to address the problem. Right? With advantage comes responsibility. It's the old Spider-Man aphorism. With great power comes great responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And accepting power without accepting responsibility, which is another way of looking at wielding power poorly, is one of the things you don't want to see in the world. And it's a hard thing, you know. The sword of Damocles hangs over the all the leaders of our culture. I look at like some of the biggest streamers in the world who I think are getting this wrong, and they may or may not be wrong. You know, I don't have all the information about their situation, or I'm not heavily involved in their community, whatever it is. But being in a position where you have that kind of spotlight confers a tremendous amount of responsibility. And the thing that I think sickens me most when I watch people who are in those positions where everyone's looking to them is when they deny that they have power over a situation. When they see the power flowing into them from the world, the community, tens of thousands of viewers, hundreds of thousands of dollars, connections, advantage, and they say, "Oh, people just want to watch me play video games or whatever it is. People want to watch me sit in the bathtub." I don't know. I'm making it up, but
well, no, I mean, there's
yeah,
a whole directory to it now.
Yes, absolutely.
And I have massive respect for those people because that's their hustle, man.
Yeah,
that's their hustle.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is that no human gets to. I have this deep sense, and I'm testing this sense. I don't want to state this as like a maxim, but I think I see this reflected in your own approach too. Is that I have this deep sense that no human gets to opt out of these human problems, really. And opting out is just choosing to ignore. And the things that we choose to ignore can come back to bite us.
Problem is that might not happen in their lifetime.
Yeah.
It will happen to other people. It won't happen to them.
Jebro,
because they're sheltered from that.
Yeah, man. Listen, I want to give you a chance to say anything else you want to say about this topic, and then I want to take 5. Can we do that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We've been going for a fair while, haven't we?
We can call this thing, bro. Like, I have been having such a great time talking to you and hashing out these difficult things. Like, I just we've been going for 3 hours. I didn't even realize.
I know.
I was just realizing I needed to, deal with my bladder again. So
yeah, same.
Yeah. No, we can put a pin in this. We need to obey the limitations of space time. So,
I mean, how long? How much more? What other topics do you have?
Oh man, like I just wanted to talk to you about your experience in these other games, in these other communities. Like I know that you got involved with Paragon.
We can do that.
Crucible is interesting, but I really do gotta pee though.
We can pee. Well, how about we pee, and I can go for like another
20 minutes.
40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So maybe like maximum like 40 minutes.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it uncomfortable for anybody, so let's take 5. We'll come back.
It's not uncomfortable. It's just unfortunately when we get older, we got responsibility.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The unfortunate thing. I could talk about this all night. I'm good. It's been a good conversation for sure.
Good, man. Yeah, I've been enjoying it too. Hope
everyone just see how it goes. All I've got to do is drop a car off and get home. It's just how much that Uber is going to cost me.
Yeah, bro. Okay. Let's take a couple of minutes. I'll check back in with you when we get back. If you still want to go, we'll go for however long you want.
Yeah, we can go for a bit longer. Yeah, for sure. I'm good with that.
Be right back.
Run, pee.
And we're back talking with Jebro. Just had a stimulating conversation all about the schisms in our culture and our society and what responsibilities we have for engaging with it. But we're going to move to lighter fare here to wrap things up. Jebro, we're gamers. We play games. You have not just played a lot of games, you have streamed a lot of games, and you've been partnered with the companies who work on these games, which puts you in a pretty unique position. I imagine yields unique perspectives. So one of the things I am most curious about asking you about is Crucible, if I may.
Yeah.
So Crucible was one of 3 titles that was announced by Amazon Game Studios at the time, newly formed, I think, back in, TwitchCon 2016, if I'm remembering right, alongside New World, which is now being released worldwide in about a month, and Breakaway
Yeah.
is long dead. And it
Oh dear.
interestingly enough, Crucible seemingly had a bit of overlap with ArenaNet, and where some ArenaNet alums went to go work on it.
Yeah.
You know about that more than I do, so I'll ask you about it. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, Crucible had a really rough launch. Didn't seem to grab an audience. Went back into beta in 2019? I think it was. No, 2020. It was last year. It was last year.
Yeah, last year.
And then so it got put back in its cage, back into beta, and then it got canceled altogether.
That's not good.
So tell me, and I know for a fact I saw you casting Crucible matches. How did you get connected with Crucible?
So I moved over here back in December, so Christmas-ish, just before Christmas 2016. And it didn't take long for me to get, like, you know, I think Colin had left by then, and I think Josh had left by then, and some others. And they still had connections with Colaris, who's a big caster, you know, and some other peeps. So they wanted some feedback on the game. We got invited to go out there and check out Crucible quite early.
Cool.
And so I got to see a lot of the systems and what the game was about. And obviously, like, you know, hang out with the peeps. There was, you know, John Peters as well, who is very much a big part of ArenaNet, big part of the balance, big part of the combat system. Right. John Corpening, who is big in Guild Wars 2 ArenaNet as well. There was there was people from art, there was people from sound, there's people from PR, there was people from everywhere in ArenaNet working there. You know, Mike Z, who was the director of ArenaNet as well for a short period of time, he ended up working there after ArenaNet. He went straight over to Amazon as well, which not a lot of people know.
Yeah, it was done very quietly.
Yeah, it was very quiet, and you know, it was very exciting. The game was very good. They didn't know. I don't think they know what they had until it was too late. And also, I think Amazon, the people up above, pushed for a release, and it wasn't ready. And if it hadn't been pushed out, then it would have been a very different story. And I think, you know, they would have had a pretty good title on their hands. But you know, I mean, that's kind of where it went to. And at the beginning, in all honesty, when I played it, I couldn't connect with it at all. Like, I didn't see it being a thing. And I think one of the reasons.
What was the game trying to do? Can you describe it for us briefly?
It was some of the abilities of some of the characters. It was very much this.
It was MOBA based, right?
I mean, the game essentially is. I mean,
you can't even describe it now. It's a bad sign. Hold on, I'll look this up.
Well, the problem is there's different game modes, and back then when it started, it was very much a deathmatch game, and then it changed into Heart of the Hives, which was what the game mode was in the end. So Heart of the Hives, which is what it was basically where you destroy a big hive, and whoever claims the heart gets the point, and you're supposed to get best of 3. Best of 5, sorry. So it's like whoever got to 3 hearts or whatever, won that game in a series of whatever, how many ever games you're having. And the way you would do it is this was the MOBA part. You would level up throughout the match by getting kills on players, by destroying PvE mobs, and by getting, you know, harvesting different things depending on what the game mode was, what the mechanics were in the map at the time, like you know, picking up harvesters and gaining essence, and essence was XP essentially. And you would try and get ahead on level, and then just in power, and then you would try and take the team fights, and you would, you know, essentially snowball into a place where, you know, you just get the hearts by, you know, killing the enemy team and killing the hive as well. So it was a very they realized that their winning game mode way too late. Pretty much as they were launching, that was their game mode that they were trying to push. And there were 2 other game modes, which were pairs, like kind of battle royale, last to survive kind of duos. And there was also a 2 huge team just Royal Rumble, basically, almost to a degree. It was just everyone was running around killing the other team members, but there
Like
was
team
just so many
deathmatch?
people
Okay.
everywhere. It was like team deathmatch basically, and whoever had the most points at the end would win. So it was a very casual and fun
Yeah,
mode.
sure.
And then in the end, they just got rid of all of it and just had the hives. So you essentially got rid of a lot of players, which was really, which was a big decision. And it came out, I think, the same time as Valorant. And
Ooh, did it?
yeah, and also some other games. I think some other bits and bobs that were coming out around that time.
Yeah, you're right. Valorant came out 1 month. Actually, like 2 weeks after Crucible.
Mm-hmm.
And that came out very ready to go.
Yep. And I mean, it's, who's it by? It's a completely different, by a company that's established in the gaming industry. And Amazon's just had this, breakaway, which didn't even get, which was just like, I'm not even sure what they were thinking about that one, in all honesty. Very, very niche basketball PvP game with Centurions, and it was fucking random. It was fun, but it was very odd.
I looked at some footage about Breakaway, and I couldn't get a sense of what it was trying to do.
It was, I had a video on it. I played the alpha and the beta a fair bit, but like it was basically like it was essentially the basketball, but just with like all these different heroes that where you could kill people and everything else, and could do these abilities and create platforms and jump off them. The game was actually quite fun, but it was very niche. It was very much like, who is this game for? Do you know what I mean? Whereas Crucible was getting closer to a place where, it was interacting with different people like in third person kind of MOBA, but also it wasn't really a MOBA at all. It's just about, leveling up an XP and farming PvE mobs to a degree, which is like a MOBA, but then that's still not really a MOBA because you're killing one thing and both teams are just fighting over this one objective. So it is very confused in its own identity of a game, which is annoying because, when bands go out there and they talk about themselves in the genre that they are, but in a way they don't like always, because I used to be in a band when I was younger. That was another thing I did. Played on stage in front of people. I'm
not going to ask any questions. I don't dare.
I used to be a bassist. Sorry. Played on the same stage as Iron Maiden and Led Zeppelin in a place called the St. Moritz Club in London. It's great.
Oh, that's cool, man.
That was when they were very young, obviously, and just starting out in the tiny holes in London anyway.
That's
it's quite cool when you see all these pictures and portraits on the wall of these bands that you love. And you're like, whoa, they played here. They probably puked over there and stuff. And it's like no bigger than my studio apartment. Shithole. Anyway, back to the conversation. I just thought I'd add that as we're talking about it. I don't get to do this that much. So Crucible, so the game, I don't feel like it was ready. I actually connected to the game much later in the process. And I think the reason why Colin and Josh got me in as well is because they knew I wouldn't bullshit them. And I don't think they ever expected me to say what I said about the game, or that I wouldn't connect to it. But for some reason,
that's the feedback that you gave, that you weren't connecting with it. You didn't know what it was trying to do.
I didn't really know what it was. Actually, I actually said that to them as well. Like, it was just a feeling. Again, sometimes with my language, I'm not very technical, and a lot of what I say, it's just sometimes it's a lot about my feeling about a thing, and then I'm like trying to grasp hold of it, and it wasn't necessarily, it was like the game mode, and it turned out, that feeling essentially was their feeling, maybe being projected onto me, I think, actually, of them not knowing what the fuck their product was that they wanted to put out. Because I think that's what they were, because when they were even up to release, they weren't even sure what it was that was their main game mode, where the community that they did, and they were trying to push this, and I think they did as well, and eventually they put out the right mode. It just wasn't ready in terms of a few different things. Sorry,
the hive mode you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the hive mode, which is very good. And I casted, I think all the tournaments are on Twitch. Let me look at this. Jebro, Crucible, tournaments. Yeah, so I casted those religiously. There's at least, and we did this in partnership with the Rivals peeps who do a lot of Rocket League, high-end Rocket League stuff as well.
Okay.
And I did at least 10 maybe. It went on for a while, and they were paid tournaments. You know, the players got paid money, the winnings. You know, Amazon invested in this, and I got different casters on each week. And I can link one in the chat actually. Just so I mean, everyone's here from my community. They know they were there probably. But like, the game was so fun to cast. It was so enjoyable, and the community got very small, but it was so awesome to cast, to play. It had its issues, like a lot of games did, but it got to a place where it's before its time. And the problem is that, again, the big wigs, the people at the top, have no idea, and Amazon potentially not having much of an idea of what they had. They just wanted to put that shit out there, and they learned from that. And now New World is in a place, thankfully, where they're allowed to keep delaying it to the opposite end of the spectrum, where now they're able to just delay and understand that this is almost their last thing. It's not the last thing, because obviously we know there's other things like that being published, like Lost Ark, and there's, you know, the other bits and pieces that are out there. There's sci-fi MMO or whatever that is. Not Lord of the Rings, I guess, anymore, unfortunately.
No, but to most people, this is Amazon's last chance. Like, they asked for
most people, yeah.
They asked us for a lot of hype and excitement with Crucible, with Breakaway, with New World. They announced them all at once. You know, I remember looking back. You know, I've obviously seen your casts. When Potato is very most successful Guild Wars 2 dedicated Guild Wars 2 YouTuber, probably. He did a few videos all about this stuff even before we knew anything, because he was excited about it. And I mean, part of that was the ArenaNet alumni, of course, but I mean,
lots to do with that.
You ask people, when you ask people to get excited for your stuff, there's a trust that's implied there. And when one game just fades away, you know, Breakaway, Crucible, heartbreakingly for many, just like, you know, taken out back and shot.
Yeah.
And now New World, people see it as the last kind of gasp of this intention that's been out there in the public since 2016 from Amazon. And it is interesting, and I wondered if you would draw that connection between Crucible being put out too soon and then pulled back, and New World and its series of seemingly endless delays.
Yeah, which I'm fine with, by the way, just in case anyone thinks that I'm not fine with that.
Yeah,
I think any game that I think any game company, game dev company that is trying to avoid one, crunch for a start, and two, wanting to put out a product that feels finished to the standards that they would like to put out there, is a very valuable and important thing to have. I think, you know, at the moment, all gaming companies should take advantage of, it's going to sound awful, take advantage of COVID and the excuse of being able to put their game out late because of COVID. Like, if that's what you need to legitimize the fact that you need to put that game out late because it's not ready and you don't want to overwork people, just do that. Or, hey, just say the fucking truth. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot more people are actually going to forgive you for putting something out later that is going to be better. And like, people talk about this a lot. And again, that actually could be my own little bubble that talks about that. And outside of that, it's actually many people just crying their eyes out. And that's a bigger community of people, which is very, very, very plausible.
Yeah, it's. I think there's an interesting calculus about making these decisions. And the thing is, we don't get to see it, right? All we get to see are the results. We don't get to see the work. We don't get to see to ask publishers to show their work in terms of why they decided to publish when they did. You know, like I look at
it makes or breaks games.
What's that?
Makes or breaks games. The decision. I mean, you know, it happened with Crucible.
Yeah, Crucible. I mean, other very famous examples. I think of Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Huge example.
And no one gives a fuck about that game.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I
And
really don't.
it's incredible how the cultural
They still care more about The Witcher.
validity. Sorry, how should I say this? How CDPR has fallen from being this golden child of game studios to suddenly just being one more crappy gaming publisher, one more game studio doing dumb stuff that's
They did a lot of
anti-gamer.
bad stuff, to be fair. The crunch was bad. There's actually some really poor representation of different communities in their game as well, which was not cool. I actually was very excited about Cyberpunk, but I will not play it on stream for that very reason.
For the representation stuff, or for the crunch, or all of it?
For representation. There's different communities that have come out. People from LGBTQI plus community who are just not happy with how they've been like different identities have been represented.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about that. I mean, I've only played the opening couple of hours. So,
and there's like very like toxic masculinity like parts, and I understand like in films and TV and movies and stuff that this kind of behavior is just the behavior of people in movies and stories, but it can still be done in a way which is not shitty. When you have control over this stuff, it's just like, yeah, there's some pretty bad representation in that game. But
okay, yeah, interesting.
And that transfers to people playing it and just that unconscious kind of feeling of that's not cool. And
yeah.
Interesting, right?
I was talking
that conversation can lead down the hole.
No, totally. I was talking with I think it was with Tom Abernathy. I think is who it was. Studio narrative director at ArenaNet. About why representation is important. And it's one of those things where he actually told me when a young person who doesn't yet know that let me try to think of how to say this. Children see and know a lot.
Yep.
And we learn the signals about what is acceptable in our culture from the things we absorb growing up, from our parents, from the media, all this stuff. That's why
society,
That's why when I was growing up, my parents didn't want me to watch MTV, shit like that. God, that's funny. I just remembered that.
It wasn't the music they wanted you to listen to, maybe as well.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I think maybe they aired in the wrong direction on that one. And having people represented in media that look like us and look like people who we love and who we related to and who we grow up with and who we go to school with and who we see who live nearby us, seeing that is turns out to be pretty important at a broad cultural level. And a big part of why we all accept the idea that the white man is kind of demographically a symbol of cultural dominance, and why an improper use of that is considered awful and toxic, rightfully so. A big reason why people can point to that is because you look at representation in media, and if you want to show someone who's like the boss, who do you show? Oh, you show an old white dude, behind a desk, something like that. Like that's the symbol. Now the tough thing is where, oh my God, we're going back into this. Let's talk about Crucible. No, sorry. I need to respect the fact that you got other places to be. So rewind the conversation about half an hour if you want to hear more about that.
Okay. We could be here for a while.
We should. I think we should talk again, maybe. But
we can talk again. I don't mind that.
So, putting the bow on Crucible. So you were connecting it to New World. Maybe I could ask you for your thoughts on New World. Did you play it during the
Funnily
beta?
enough, I'm a creator for New World as well.
Of course, connected.
I was
Jebro.
involved very early with New World as well, actually.
Yeah. What do you think
Guess
about?
why? Because of ArenaNet people.
That is so cool, man. That is actually
Yeah,
so
Josh
cool.
and other peeps. I
So
went to Amazon Gaming Studios. Actually, a Bogart I went. Dot Got Game, if you know Dot Got Game.
yeah, of course.
Someone called Loco and Tracy Cola, who are quite big peeps as well, and Hutnick. Now, I was probably the smaller of the creators that were there, but Josh put me forward as one of the peeps to go along, and I think probably Bog and probably Dot Got Game as well.
Cool.
Back when it was just a survival game, and there was nothing to it, essentially. This was probably 2018, maybe maybe 17, maybe 18. I can't remember which year it was. There's a tweet somewhere on Twitter about me going to Amazon Game Studios.
Okay.
I'm smaller, I'm not as in with them anymore, but like I went to TwitchCon, had dinner with them, met all the devs, the game director, all the peeps.
Cool.
They remember me, thankfully, just about.
You're a memorable dude.
Sorry?
You're a memorable dude.
Well, for some reasons. That flipping rambler, good lord, get rid of him.
Nah. So you were connected in pretty early.
Yeah.
Along the New
World.
World.
Alpha, though.
Okay.
Other than being there, I played the alpha for a tiny bit, but I wanted to get in on the betas and give my real reactions to what was going on. And where it was the different stages. I don't get involved in many alphas, in all honesty, because I don't have the fucking time.
Yeah, there's time for
a start. School and this, and that doesn't. Then maybe one day I'll have a social life. But like, well, I really enjoyed the beta before this one. I really fucking enjoyed
the
it.
one.
The
public test last year in August.
2020, yeah.
That was my first chance to play the game.
Yeah, that was like the first taste of the game it was going to become, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Where they had, and then it was like, it's got a lot of this kind of stuff, but it's very repetitive questing. It's very repetitive systems. What are you going to do when you get past this? And essentially, what is the different experience that you're having as you level up through this game? Because essentially, you're fighting the same mob over and over and over again all the time. But the area looks different and is beautiful, and your combat is pretty good and fun. But what's the end game? What's going on? And then obviously, then they added dungeons. They've added all this extra stuff, which is really, really cool. But then again, there's still a lot of the systems which I feel like I'm massively hyped for this game, and our community is as well. And we're going to play to death. It's going to be my other main game along with Guild Wars 2. I'm going to make guides for it. I'm going ham in this game.
Oh, hell yeah, brother.
Just going to.
I love it.
Yeah, and it's like, we played the first dungeons, but I actually think that most of the people here are probably in that group as well. I loved it. Some of the combat with some of the weapons is a little less. Some of it is quite fluid. Some of it is not so fluid.
Yeah.
The newer weapons actually feel a lot better than the older weapons that have not been touched. It feels like.
I noticed that. Great Axe feels great, man.
Yeah. I mean, like there's some real fluidity there. The rapier stuff feels good. Sword shield kind of feels okay. The axe feels a little bit better with a rework. The rifle feels a bit clunky in terms of not the snipery kind of side of it, but the more trapper. The trapper just feels, not gonna lie, it's pretty shit. Like, it's just not good. The feedback is just dump it and bring something else in, or just adjust those traps. Because when you throw a grenade, it shouldn't be as if a 3-year-old child is throwing it. Yeah, pretty much. and as if it's got no movement because you kind of throw it on the floor and it just sticks there and it's weird. Do you know what I mean? It just feels odd. And I was like, make it more of an engineer, like Guild Wars 2 kind of thing, if you want to do that. But the Ice Gauntlet's great. I really love that. I like the heal stuff. I think that's cool.
The life
I think that the fact that you can't use those free weapons anymore together and have that ridiculous dash on the heal stuff is good.
Whoa! Yeah.
So please clip that. So please clip that.
I love the little like.
Please do that again.
Oh, I don't know if I could duplicate
the
it.
hand movement as well. Because I know what you're doing.
It's like,
just
whoa!
So many random. There's just so many fucking random words in that game. And
I know.
When you're healing a snow, it's like
I love all the things people yell. It makes no sense.
Oh, what was the word that I kept saying with the heal stuff? It was like Seychelles or something. I can't remember what it was, but it kept saying that every time. I can't remember. It sounded like something else or another or like a place. I can't remember what it was, but it just every time I said something like the language, it was its own thing. You know, it is very awesome in that way because it gives you that sense of separation. Now, the interesting thing about New World is, which probably a lot of people don't talk about, is how they are trying to make sure that they are correct in terms of how they are talking about different identities and cultures. Which is a really good thing to see, actually, from Amazon Games specifically. They are very culturally, they're trying to be culturally aware because the game was originally meant to be very much, I feel like it was going to be about, like, you know, going over to America and the indigenous people of America and, you know, what was happening, you know, obviously with the whole forming of America and America being the country that this country is, and how it was only a country before, you know, when, you know, the white people of the West came over to America and created this place. But, you know, they did well and they changed the story of their game, and they're still trying to make sure that they're culturally respectful and I don't know, they seem to be doing good work there, actually. That's something I'm impressed by very much so, which has gotten me more on board with it. You know?
Yeah, I remember when I read that there had been a massive change to pivot away from the foes you face in Eternum being, or whatever the content was going to be called, right? Being like these native native humans, and it's like, or humanoids, whatever. And it's like
being like from tribes that are indigenous, you know.
And I don't know, maybe it's just the you know, hindsight's 2020, but thinking about that, it's like, wow, like I could have caught that from a mile away. You can't do that. It's not gonna work.
People still do it in games. They're still doing so many games that come out, you know, like any games, like there's some kind of, you know, reference to a tribe, or like someone's bad, you're doing a quest and that these people are bad, the bad people hoarding stuff, or they're doing this, that, the other. It's like, you know, make it the white people, if anything, like do, you know, or make it some creature that's just, you know, completely different, like change the fucking envelope, like change the story.
The Star Trek formula, you know? Right?
Sorry?
That's the Star Trek formula. That's what Star Trek was kind of about when it first came out. It was about talking about, well, not every episode of Star Trek, but it's about finding ways to talk about cultural issues by giving us some separation from it, by making it about, you know, Romulans and Klingons.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Angry Earth and skeletons, or I don't know. They don't seem to have much personality, so I'm not sure if that still works, but
it's important.
Am I a Trekkie? I love Star Trek. Yes.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big Trekkie, actually. I bet you went nuts when they had it in the Mopop in Seattle Star Trek for exhibition. I don't know if you ever went.
No, No, in fact, I'm not. I've always been shy about going to like gatherings, like fandom gatherings. Always have been
Oh,
shy
this was
about it.
more of an exhibition, I guess, than a like fandom thing. I think.
Yeah, still, I don't know.
Awesome. I went
I
to one of those in
I have
London.
this like deep
That's
sense
great.
of internalized shame from growing up that I should be hiding these things.
And going to those things brings up. Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, like
I'm
I
shaking it
remember
though.
one
I'm
in
here on
London.
stream after all.
Oh, they're awesome to go to. I get you though. I went to the one in London. I met Chekhov.
Oh,
Yeah, it was very awesome. I got an autograph. It's still an autograph picture in London, still somewhere in a box.
that's cool.
Met him, very frail and it's very elderly, but he was still very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I would. I grew up on that shit.
Yeah. Star Trek, man. Well, hey, Jebro, I want to respect the boundaries you suggested earlier and let you off the hook for the night.
Okay.
This has been an awesome conversation.
We've been talking for so long, dude.
It's clear we could go all night.
Is there anything else that you want to ask me? Just like,
of course, but none of it's
like
none of it's like quick or easy. It's like,
okay, yeah, that's true.
Leave it for another time, perhaps. But Jebro, I want to give you a chance for people who are going to watch this after the fact or here watching live to let folks know where to find you and promote anything you're working on.
Also, the reason I'm chewing on this stick, these things all night, is because I gave up vaping. So I used to smoke for a long time. So this is my thing, and Reader Geek is the one to blame for that because it's actually helped a lot. But now I'm addicted to tea tree oil sticks. So that's cool. Anyway, Twitch.
Cool.
Help it. It's better than flipping smoking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/JebroUnity. JebroUnity. I do a podcast, which is now going to be weekly. Called The Lightbringers.
Oh yeah.
Indeed. Very good. Very good, wholesome people on there. We have awesome creators. It's become a little bit more regular with the peeps we have on there at the moment, but trying to open it up and just now we're changing it to more of a gameplay every other week. So there's not necessarily an audio episode every week, but like we're going to play through the game and talk about the game because I feel like a lot of stuff doesn't come up until you start playing it with people.
Yeah.
I got YouTube, Twitch stream, which I do, pretty regularly. Is my full-time job, and I have an Instagram and all the Twitter and everything else. It's just Jebro Unity or Jebro Guild Wars 2. Look me up, you'll see me. I stream and do loads of stuff though, so it's a very big, wide variety of things, and we have an awesome community, a very welcoming and inclusive people that identify with many different communities. So everyone is welcome, and the only thing that's not welcome is disrespect and arseholes. So there you go.
Okay. And coming up for you, I know New World is on the horizon. Also sounds like you have a new chapter in your counseling life coming up.
Yeah, internship stuff. So I'm going to be counseling kids and adolescents toward the end of September.
All right, opening that next door.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
As for me, I'm Deeg. I'm going to be rebranding my social media shortly, so they all have the same word. TBD on that. But if you're watching this, you've already found me. I'm on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Patreon now. Check it out.
Nice.
Links around here. Thank you, Jebro. Thank you, everyone who could turn out. Thank you for everyone who's watching this after the fact. I love all of y'all. This is the real shit, I believe, needs a place to be discussed. And I'm happy we were able to really make some room for that today. So thank you, Jebro.
Damn, agreed. I appreciate it.
All right. Till next time, y'all. Have a good one.